I gave the checkpoint one last look and ran back to Logan. Too many hounds. I could handle a level 10 one-on-one, but the swarm of low levels would never let that happen. So I had two real plays: thin the pack or hit all of them at once. I told Logan what I'd seen, asked him to keep watch, then climbed a tree and settled on a thick branch. Eyes closed. Options. Option 1. Pick off stragglers, hit level 10, then break the checkpoint. Option 2. Risk it, push my talent to level 2, hope for a new trick. Option 3. Try a new way to use essence. I chose a path in between. Reach level 9, raise talent to level 2, and test essence for something useful. Time was tight. I didn't know how long the pillar's lightning would hold. If the hounds grabbed whatever Arcas left there, we were in trouble. I focused on the essence swirling in my heart. Essence manipulation on. I split off a unit, ran it through my body from left to right, then kept it moving for an hour, letting it soak into muscle and fiber. When I climbed down, the sun was still high. I wanted level 9 before dark. I laid out the plan to Logan and brought him along. We would hunt whatever crossed our path. With the hounds marching to the valley, we could intercept and squeeze a level out of them. We moved through the forest, quiet and quick. A pack of 5 appeared, headed for the checkpoint. I signaled Logan to take the 2 level 3s. I would handle the 3 level 5s. Normally one punch ends it, but I wanted to test something. Power up, I whispered. The generator roared awake. Essence manipulation. I fed essence into my legs. They lit up, muscles contracting and hardening. My body could handle it. Bare feet dug into soil. I launched, faster than my usual burst. First level 5 in range. I shifted essence to my fist and backhanded its jaw. Bone cracked. The hound ragdolled into a tree. The other 2 lunged. I pulled essence back to my legs and focused on pure evasion. Vision sharpened. I slipped between their strikes. They could not keep up. It felt wrong. Too easy. I ended it and crushed their skulls. I checked my reserves. 3 of 5 left. Logan was already done with his 2. If I wanted more energy, I needed a harder fight. If I wanted to refine control, I needed a harder fight. Level up meant stronger enemies or a lot more weak ones. I needed a real challenge. Logan jogged over, grinning. Keep going. A few more and I level. I exhaled and nodded, then changed course. You want that level, I've got you. First, I need your help. I sat cross-legged on a branch above the checkpoint and watched the hounds snarl and crash into each other. 50 to 60 now. A few level 8s and 9s in the mix. I came back because I needed a brutal fight to grow. Arcas said no one dies in the first month. That sounded like permission to be reckless. I grinned. If I was wrong, I would learn the hard way. I stood, breathed once, and dropped from the tree. I walked toward the cluster, circling the lightning-wrapped pillar. Head snapped to me. Growls rose. Essence reserves at full. 5 of 5. I had spent an hour topping off. Power up, I muttered. The generator kicked. Essence manipulation on. Essence flooded my legs. I ran, heart hammering, talent chewing every step and impact into raw energy. Essence built inside me, coiled and ready. A level 7 lunge from the left, jaws for my ribs. I drove essence into my legs and slipped wide. Before it could reset, I shifted power to my arm, turned my hips, and punched through its skull. Crack. Down. Another level 7 swiped for my throat. I bent back, felt the wind of its claws skim my face, then planted and pulsed essence into my right leg. My knee snapped up into its jaw. It lifted off the ground and flew. No pause. A level 8 rushed in, faster and meaner. I twisted past its bite, but a second level 8 came from behind. No room to clear it. Absorb. Its claws raked my shoulder. I swallowed that force, turned it to essence, and drove the new charge into my arms. I grabbed its tail and slammed it into the dirt. The ring tightened. Level 6 S and 7s pressed, with 8s weaving for openings. Smarter ones circled. I had to move faster. Essence poured into my legs. My feet barely touched earth. I slid past snaps and claws. A level 6 stepped in. One strike ended it. A level 7 swung. I slipped under and drove an essence-loaded elbow into its neck. It folded. Then the level 9S moved. I felt them first. Heavier cadence. Cleaner angles. Hunger in their eyes. One blurred at me. I twisted away. Too fast to trade blows straight up. I had to keep cutting lines, pick kills, stay inches ahead. An 8 lunged. I sidestepped and punched through its skull. Another dropped from above. I rolled, its talons skimming my back. Breath grew rough. Body ached from near misses and constant channeling. Still good. Absorb. Generate. Repeat. Every second tightened my control. One mistake, and I was meat. I had no plans to make one. Not yet. I slipped through the battlefield like a shadow, weaving between snapping jaws. Each footfall fed essence into my legs for speed. Every strike rerouted power into my arms, turning my fists into hammers. A level 7 lunge for my calf. I twisted midair, missed its bite, and caved its skull with a punch. Crack. Down. Another came from the flank. I dropped, pivoted, and drove a kick into its ribs. Essence-loaded muscle did the rest. It skidded limp across the dirt. My back burned from near misses. Claw tracks tore my thighs. A vicious level 8 had gotten teeth into my shoulder before I crushed its head. Blood ran hot with sweat. Another level 8 pounced. I slipped past, caught its throat, poured essence into my grip, and twisted. One more carcass. No pause. No mercy. The 7th level 8 hit the ground twitching. Text flashed across my vision. Level up. Level 8, level 9. I barely had time to breathe before 2 level 9s joined. Faster. Heavier. I dodged the first, and the second clipped my side. Teeth snapped an inch from my face. I rolled, took more scratches. I needed an edge. I clenched my fists and shoved essence into my eyes. Pain exploded. Green light flared. For a heartbeat, I saw nothing. Then everything sharpened. The world didn't slow. I sped up. Muscle tells, weight shifts, attack lines, all clear. I pushed through the agony and kept killing. Minutes stretched. Damage stacked. Essence used to set my muscles on fire. Breath came ragged. Blood trickled from my eyes. Time to go. I turned a break away. Then a level 9 slammed my back. I flew, hit hard, and my shoulder dislocated with a wet pop. Teeth grit. Up. Run. They chased. I didn't sprint blind. I peeled them off in 1s and 2s, cut corners, and finished quick. Blood coated my fists, forearms, shins. Only the thrower remained. The level 9 snarled and rushed. I slipped the bite, but my body lagged. Pain dulled my edges. End it. As it leaped, I pivoted, grabbed its tail, and yanked. Essence flooded my arms. I whipped it into a tree. Once. Bones cracked. Twice. A whimper. Thrice. Silence. I released the tail and swayed. Blood dripped. Vision swam. I braced on a trunk, sucked air, and slammed my shoulder back into place. It clicked. Pain flashed white. I limped away. Every step dragged. Muscle screamed. I leaned on a tree and panted until the world steadied. Brush rustled. Logan burst out, eyes going wide. Good gods, you're insane. You said 10 minutes and out. Before I answered, he slung my arm over his shoulder and hauled me up. I chuckled, got carried away. He shook his head and ran us through the trees, quiet and clean. I checked my essence. 5/5. Relief. I dumped it into Constitution, then spent my points, plus 3 synapse, plus 2 strength. Sleep crashed over me like a wave. I woke under a bush, wrapped in leaves and ache. Logan's handiwork. My necklace was still on. Good. I pushed branches aside and stood. Bandages tugged. Scabs had formed. Boosting Constitution past 20 had done its job. I was drained, but I got what I came for. Level 9. Tighter essence control. Continuous combat without stalling. Better absorption. I was close to upgrading my talent. And the surprise move? Essence in my eyes. Perception nearly doubled. I frowned. Feels like that should be a skill. Maybe I needed more testing. Night had settled thick. Clouds smothered the moon. The forest whispered, and distant abominations howled. No sign of Logan. I found my bag, gulped water, chewed through bad rations. Hunger won. Footsteps. Logan stepped into view. Where'd you go? I asked through a mouthful. Business, he said, rubbing his stomach. I snorted. Got it. He dropped beside me. How do you feel? Tired. Good. That was a fight. That was a suicide run, he said. One bad step, and you were dead. I winked. Still here. He sighed. Rankings updated. You're showing level 9. Everyone else is stuck at 6. I nodded, pride warm and small. We talked a while, then chose to rest. I climbed a tree and settled on a thick branch, replaying every mistake. I hadn't routed essence cleanly near the end. Sloppy channels. Torn fibers. The pain proved it. I felt the itch again. Unfinished business. The cage at the pillar gnawed at me. Arcus promised a reward. Curiosity bit harder than caution. I hope I don't regret this, I muttered, dropped from the branch, and headed back into the dark.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
I moved away from our hiding spot, heading straight for the checkpoint. My heart was restless, and I needed to release some steam. At the same time, I wanted to deal with the level 10 hound once and for all. This time, I was more confident in my chances. The night cloaked me in darkness as I slipped through the trees, my bare feet barely making a sound. I pushed my dexterity to its limits, weaving through the terrain with precise movements, each step measured and controlled. When I reached the valley, I saw the hounds sprawled around the pillar, their bodies dimly illuminated by the flickering lightning crackling along its surface. I scanned their numbers. Around 20 to 25 lower-level hounds loitered near the outskirts. The level 10 lay near the pillar, its chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. 2 level 9s rested nearby, along with a couple of level 8s. I stood still for a few minutes, assessing my condition. My muscles were strained, a dull ache spreading across my back. My eyes felt better than before, though traces of strain lingered. Taking a slow breath, I pulled up my status screen to check where I stood. Status? Name, Billion Ironheart. Race, human. Class, not applicable. Laws, not applicable. Level 9. Talent, Generator 1. Essence, 0 out of 5. Attributes, Strength, 25.5. Constitution, 17.5. Dexterity, 15.5. Synapse, 24.2. And use stats, 0. Skills, Essence Manipulation, Innate, Level 1. I had reached Level 9, with my strength surpassing 25 and my synapse nearing the same threshold. My essence store, however, was completely empty. Climbing a tree that overlooked the pillar, I settled onto a thick branch, crossing my legs. Closing my eyes, I focused on the steady rhythm of my heartbeat, letting it ground me and clear my mind. My breathing slowed, my thoughts quieted, and for the next 2 hours, I remained still, allowing my body to recover while sharpening my concentration. When I finally opened my eyes, I glanced up. It was past midnight. Below, the hounds lay sprawled lazily around the pillar, their eyes fixed on the glass core hovering above it. I stood on the tree, knowing that my first task was to refill my empty essence store. Scanning the branches above me, I spotted one that would fit perfectly in my hand. Taking a deep breath, I moved toward it, clenched my fist, and drove a punch straight into the wood. The sharp crack of impact echoed through the silent forest. The branch groaned under the force before finally snapping with a loud creak. I caught it before it could fall, gripping it firmly as I began shaping it into a 5-foot-long polearm. The noise stirred the hounds resting around the pillar. Their ears twitched, heads lifting in alarm. Even the level 10 rose to its feet, its ears perking up as thick drool dripped from its maw, carrying the rancid stench of decay. Balancing on the branch, I locked eyes with the beast. It let out a deep, guttural growl before barking loudly, a signal to the others. The moment the sound died, the pack lunged toward me, their snarls ripping through the night. Clawed feet pounded against the dirt, kicking up leaves and dust as they charged. The only light in the darkness came from the flickering lightning crackling around the pillar. I whispered, "Power up," and my talent activated. I gripped the polearm tightly and exhaled. The moment the first hound leaped, I dropped from the tree, swinging the branch in a downward arc. The wood connected with its skull with a sickening crack. The hound's body smashed into the ground with a boom, and it remained still. My feet hit the ground, knees bending to absorb the impact, and I pivoted instantly, pressing my back against the rough bark of the tree. No room to retreat. No need to watch my back. Just me, the branch, and the pack of snarling hounds in front of me. The closest one lunged. I reacted instinctively, stepping forward and ramming the tip of the branch into its open maw. Blood spurted as the wood pierced through the back of its throat. I wrenched it free and twisted just in time to parry another hound's swipe, the force vibrating through my arms. More came. I took just one step forward, my increased synapse allowing me to perceive everything clearly and smash another hound's head. I kept swinging the polearm and always taking just 1 or 2 steps forward, always keeping the tree on my back. The polearm cracked against ribs, shattered jaws, and split skulls. Each impact sent jolts through my body, my heartbeat thrumming in response, absorbing the energy of every clash. More came. I took just 1 step forward, my heightened synapse sharpening everything, the growls, the shifting dirt, the glint of teeth in the flickering light. Another hound lunged, and I met it with a swift strike to the skull, the impact jolting at my arms. It collapsed mid-motion. I exhaled sharply and kept moving, just 1 step forward, then 1 back. The polearm became an extension of my body, sweeping through the air in brutal arcs. A hound came from the left. I twisted my grip and slammed the butt of the weapon into its snout, sending it reeling. Another tried to slip in from the right. I pivoted, the polearm cracking down on its neck before it could pounce. The pack circled, growling, snapping, but I never left my spot. The tree at my back kept me anchored, my footwork efficient, my movements precise. No wasted motion, no blind swings, only controlled strikes and calculated steps. The polearm whistled through the air, splitting flesh and bone. I felt every impact, my muscles straining, my heartbeat surging. The more I fought, the more energy my heart absorbed, and essence began to take shape within me. A level 8 hound rushed forward, faster and heavier than the others. It leaped high, claws outstretched. I gritted my teeth and swung hard, putting everything into one final strike. The branch slammed into its side with a deafening snap, both the hound's ribs and my weapon breaking at once. I clicked my tongue, tossing the useless remains of the branch aside. But the essence generation was too slow. My eyes flickered toward the pillar, watching the lightning dance across its surface. I narrowed my gaze. I could try absorbing the energy from the lightning, but I can't be too obvious. If Arcus is watching, it'd be trouble if he figures out my talent. Decision made, I sprinted toward the pillar, weaving between lunging hounds and smashing aside the ones I couldn't avoid. The level 10 stirred at my sudden charge. Its ears perked up, and it let out a deep growl before charging straight at me. I didn't slow down. A level 5 hound leaped at me, but I ducked low, snatched its tail with one hand, and jumped, swinging it with both hands like a weapon. The level 10 had no time to react before the smaller hound slammed into it midair, sending both of them crashing into a tree. I skidded to a stop, turning toward the hound, my back now facing the pillar. The level 10 recovered quickly, shaking off the impact before fixing its glowing red eyes on me. It barked once, loud and sharp, then rushed forward again. I met its charge head-on. As it lunged, jaws wide open, I caught them in my hands, muscles straining as it pushed me back. I let it drive me toward the pillar, bracing myself. And then we both smashed into the crackling stone. A jolt of lightning ripped through my body, forcing me to jump away and roll across the ground. Damn, that hurts. It didn't leave any visible injuries, but my muscles went numb like thousands of pins were pricking my skin. For a moment, I couldn't move properly, but then my heart roared to life. Heat exploded from my chest, surging through my veins. My entire essence store filled in an instant, and I had the distinct feeling that if I had more storage, it would have overflowed. I pushed myself to my feet, eyes locking onto the hounds rushing toward me from all sides. I activated my skill, essence manipulation, and channeled essence straight into my eyes. The world dulled. My perception sharpened. My thoughts accelerated. I felt the air vibrate, the soil tremble beneath my feet. Everything slowed, crawling forward in my vision. Then, a system ding echoed in my mind. I exhaled, deactivating my skills. The world snapped back to normal speed, and a dull ache spread through my muscles. Despite the carnage around them, the remaining hounds, 8 in total, mostly low levels, kept creeping toward me, growling low and steady. You never learn, do you? I smirked. I checked my essence store completely full. Then, my gaze flicked to my talent panel. The requirement to level up generator was sitting at 94/100. 6 more units of essence, and I could finally upgrade it. All right, boys, I cracked my knuckles. Let's get some practice in. I channeled all my essence into Constitution, temporarily boosting it to 22.5 and draining my essence store completely. With my body reinforced, I stepped toward the beasts. I lowered my stance, relaxed my muscles, and spread my arms wide, inviting them in. Come on, give me your best shot. One of the hounds took the bait. It snarled and lunged, aiming straight for my chest. I didn't move. Instead, I braced myself and let it smash into me, its full momentum slamming against my body. My feet skidded back an inch, but that was it. Thump. Not bad. I muttered, feeling my heart hum with energy. I grabbed the hound's skull and threw it away. Next, 2 more hounds charged in, one from the left, the other from the right. I twisted slightly, letting both of them crash into my ribs at the same time. My body barely budged, but the impact sent a jolt of force straight into my heart. Oh, this is working beautifully. I chuckled. One of the hounds, apparently tired of my nonsense, leaped straight for my head. I tilted back at the last second, caught it midair, and tucked it under my left arm like a misbehaving puppy. Gotcha! Another hound lunged at my waist. I snatched it midair with my right arm. 2 for 2? I laughed, now holding a struggling hound under each arm like a pair of oversized, angry watermelons. They wriggled and snarled, trying to claw at me. Shoo, I whispered. This is a bonding experience. Before they could protest further, I bent my knees and sprinted toward the pillar. The other hounds chased after me, barking in confusion, but I wasn't stopping. I slammed into the pillar full force, with the 2 hounds still trapped under my arms. Boom! Lightning arced over my body as the impact rattled through me. My hair stood on end, my vision flashed white for a second, and the 2 hounds in my grasp made a noise that was somewhere between a yelp and a very dignified woof. I stumbled back, dropping them. They swayed on their feet, blinking in dazed confusion before their legs gave out, and they flopped to the ground, unconscious. Progress. 99 out of 100. The remaining 6 hounds hesitated. I shook myself off, cracking my neck. Oh, don't back out now. I need your help. I rushed at the hounds, knocking them out one by one. Their bodies thudded against the ground, unmoving but still breathing. The area fell silent. The only sound was the occasional crackle of lightning from the pillar behind me. The unconscious hounds lay scattered around, and I stood at the center of it all, completely unharmed. I stretched, rolling my shoulders. My body felt solid, reinforced by the boost I had given it. With a thought, I deactivated generator, deciding to level it up later when I was back at my resting place. I had no doubt Arcas was watching, and I didn't want to reveal too much. Turning toward the pillar, I watched the lightning dance along its surface. Sparks flickered in the air, illuminating the battlefield in brief flashes. Now, let's see what reward you left for us, old man. I approached the pillar, eyeing the crackling lightning with caution. It stood tall, an imposing barrier between me and whatever lay inside. I circled it, searching for a switch or some kind of mechanism, but there was nothing. I frowned, crossing my arms. So no easy way in, huh? I could have used essence to make the jump, taking the pillar's support to reach the top in one leap. But I didn't want to waste any essence just yet. There were no trees close enough to use as a springboard. Throw it as then. I went to one of the trees, broke off 2 branches, and returned to the pillar. Taking aim, I hurled the first branch at the cage. It missed slightly, flying off into the darkness. The second one, however, struck dead on. The cage wobbled for a moment before slipping off the edge and plummeting down. I sprinted forward and caught it just before it hit the ground. Excited, I broke open the small cage and picked up the glowing blue glass core along with the map inside. I turned the core over in my hand, examining it closely. And that was it. It was glass. It was a sphere, and it glowed blue. I blinked a few times. I knocked on it. Nothing. I shook it. Still nothing. I even tried random voice commands, activate, open, power on, but the damn thing just sat there, glowing like a fancy decoration. Now, what am I supposed to do with this? Out of ideas, I tossed it back into the cage and held it in my hand, stuffing the map into my pocket. Then my gaze drifted to the unconscious hounds, and a grin spread across my face. I'll be back. I made my way back to our resting place, the forest shrouded in darkness. As soon as I arrived, I called out to Logan and told him to head to the checkpoints to raise his level. I had left him a few gifts there. He stared at me, shocked. Then, as if realizing something, he looked up. I followed his gaze, and sure enough, the floating cube displaying our level rankings hovered in the night sky. My name was still at the top, now at level 10, while the second place rank remained at level 6. Logan turned back to me, his face unreadable for a moment. Then, after cursing me out with an impressive variety of insults, he stormed off toward the checkpoint. I chuckled and climbed up my tree, settling onto a thick branch. Finally, I exhaled heavily, my body relaxing as my mind settled into a calm state. The checkpoint was cleared, and I had done it before anyone else. But it wasn't about being first. I had felt capable of completing it, and if I had ignored that feeling, it would have made me restless all night. I opened my status and allocated the unused stat points from leveling up. Constitution increased to 20, Dexterity to 18.5. Next, I tested Essence Manipulation. Now that it had reached level 2, I wanted to see how much smoother it had become. I focused, pulling essence from my heart and moving it through my body. It flowed more easily now, responding faster and with greater efficiency. Thanks to my increased constitution and the upgraded skill, I could now handle more essence at once. I tried shaping it. Instead of free-flowing gas, I managed to form an uneven sphere, still crude, but it was a start. I grinned. Just one more unit of essence, and I could level up my talent. Excitement bubbled inside me at the thought. I stood, stretched, and dropped down from the tree. Power up, I whispered, activating my generator core. I took a deep breath and activated my new skill. Synapse boost. Everything sharpened in an instant. I felt the breeze whisper across my skin. The leaves around me slowed, their edges crisp, each movement exaggerated. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, steady and clear. My sense of smell heightened, and my vision improved dramatically. The only downside was that both of my innate skills required essence to function. If my tank ran dry, I'd be back to normal. I funneled 3 units of essence into dexterity, temporarily boosting it to 21.5. Then, with my heightened senses, I closed my eyes. I needed just one more unit of essence to level up generator. I decided to work on my strikes, focusing entirely on channeling essence properly. With essence manipulation, now at level 2, I wanted to refine its efficiency and control. I shifted into my stance, my mind locked onto the flow of essence in my arm. My first punch landed against the tree, solid and controlled. I continued, each strike fueled with precision. My thoughts focused on every motion, every pulse of essence moving through my muscles. It took me half an hour of slow, precise punching before I finally heard the notification. Requirement completed. Talent leveling up. Suddenly, essence stirred around me, rushing into my heart. It wasn't as overwhelming as when I first activated my talent, but it still came in waves, controlled yet powerful. I closed my eyes, gritting my teeth, staying perfectly still. My heart heated up, its frantic beating hammering against my chest. The process continued for about 2 minutes, the sensation intense, but not unbearable. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything settled. Talent level up. Generator 1, Generator 2. I exhaled sharply. Damn, that hurt a little. Shaking off the lingering discomfort, I pulled up my status and navigated to the talent section. Time to check the updates. Talent. Talent name, Generator. Function, generates essence from absorbed energy. Level 2. Essence, 2 out of 10 units. Level up requirement, 200 units of essence generated. Progress, 2 of 200. Talent upgrade requirement, talent level 5. Generator activation command, power up. Recharge sources, any form of energy. Abilities, essence transfer, can transfer stored essence to an attribute. After use, 20% of the transferred essence unit remains as a permanent boost. Essence infusion, can infuse stored essence. Wow, there were a lot of updates to the panel. First, my talent had increased to level 2. Second, my total essence storage had doubled from 5 to 10. Third, the requirement for the next level up was still 20 times the total storage, meaning I now needed to generate 200 units of essence to reach level 3. Fourth, my essence transferability had received an upgrade. Now, 20% of the transferred essence would remain as a permanent boost. That meant if I transferred all 10 units, 2 units would stay as a permanent increase to my attributes. This was huge since I would only gain 5 in use stat points per level up until level 25. On top of that, if I infused all 10 units into an attribute during a fight, it would be the equivalent of gaining 2 levels worth of stats instantly. With this, I would be able to fight 2 levels above me without much issue combining the boost with my skills. Next, I moved to my status section to check my attributes. Status. Name, Billion Ironheart. Race, human. Class, not applicable. Laws, not applicable. Level 10. Talent, Generator 2. Essence, 2 out of 10. Attributes, Strength, 25.5. Constitution, 20. Dexterity, 18.8. Synapse, 24.2. And use stats, 0. Skills, Essence Manipulation, Innate, Level 2. Synapse Boost, Innate, Level 1. The status panel displayed my new skill along with the level update to Essence Manipulation. My attributes were growing steadily. 2 were approaching 20, while the other 2 had already reached 25. There wasn't much imbalance either, which was a good sign. I closed the status window. My body was recovering well, but what I really needed now was some proper food. Unfortunately, all that roamed this place were abominations, and their meat was completely out of the question. They reeked too much. That thought reminded me of something else. I sniffed the air and immediately regretted it. I was covered in hound blood and all sorts of other filth, and the stench was unbearable. I looked down at myself. My uniform was in tatters. With a sigh, I tore off the remaining scraps of my shirt and decided to just stay in my pants while I waited for Logan. He was taking longer than expected. Finally, after 10 minutes, Logan arrived, grinning from ear to ear. I leveled up, he said. I nodded. That's good. Would have been really surprising if you couldn't even kill unconscious hounds. I joked. He coughed awkwardly. Yeah, thanks for that, Billion. I'll remember this favor. I waved a hand dismissively. Don't mind it. Anyway, I'm going to sleep. My body needs rest. See you in the morning. With that, I said my goodbyes, climbed up the tree, and fell asleep almost instantly, my heart at peace. The next morning, I stirred from my sleep. My eyes blinked open, and after a quick glance around to confirm I was still on the same branch with no danger nearby, I stood up, yawning and stretching. My gaze drifted up to the floating projector in the sky, and seeing my name still at the top of the rankings, I smiled. I like that. Now, there were 2 important things I needed to take care of. First, figure out what the hell that glass core actually did. Second, and far more urgent, find a place to take a shit and a bath. Hey, Logan, wake up. It's morning already, I called out. From a nearby tree, I heard a groggy mumble. Yeah, just 2 more minutes. I chuckled. Oh, is that so? Without hesitation, I moved between the branches and jumped onto his tree. I landed lightly on Logan's branch, crouching to keep my balance. He was sprawled out against the trunk, snoring softly, his arms crossed like he was hugging himself for warmth. His mouth hung open slightly, and a faint line of drool trailed down his cheek. An idea popped into my head. Carefully, I positioned myself over him, gripped the branch above for support, and swung my legs forward, planting both feet against his side. Then, with a light push, "Rise and shine, buddy." Logan jolted awake with a strangled yelp as he lost his balance. He flailed, grabbed at nothing, and in a glorious display of morning confusion, tumbled right off the branch. With a loud thud, he landed flat on his back in the dirt below. Silence. Then, from below, "Ow!" I peeked over the edge, grinning. "Good morning, sunshine. Sleep well?" Logan groaned, sitting up and rubbing his back. "Man, no pranks in the morning. That's the rule." Logan groaned, rubbing his back. "That's fair," I said, hopping down beside him. "But rules are meant to be broken, and we've got more important things to do." "Like what?" he asked, still glaring. I patted my stomach. "For one, I need to take a dump and a bath. So pick up my bag and follow me." Logan gagged. "Dude, what the hell? Too much information." I shrugged, grabbed the glass core cage, and started walking. Better get used to it. We're stuck in this place for a while. Behind me, I heard him mutter some gibberish which I obviously ignored. By the time we reached the river, the sun was higher, casting its light over the flowing water. I dropped my bag near the shore, cracked my neck, and waded in without hesitation. The river was cold, but after everything I had been through, it felt refreshing. I ran my fingers through my hair, scrubbing off the dried blood and grime. Logan sat on the bank, fiddling with the glass core, turning it over in his hands. "So," Logan said, tossing the core up and catching it, "any idea what this thing actually does?" I shook my head, dunking myself underwater for a moment before resurfacing. "Nope." I tried knocking on it, shaking it, even shouting random activation words. "Nothing." Logan snorted. I swam to the shore and rested my arms on a rock. Maybe it needs a password or some special trigger. Could be linked to some ability or item we don't have yet. Or, Logan said, dramatically holding it up, "It's just a glowing paperweight, and Old Man Ark has put it there to mess with us." I sighed. Wouldn't put it past him. I pulled myself out of the river, water dripping down my body. As I moved, I felt the difference. My body had changed. The increased stats were subtle but noticeable. My muscles felt more defined, my movements more fluid. I clenched my fists, feeling the enhanced strength in my grip. Even my skin seemed tougher, like my body was adapting to the sheer punishment I had put it through. Rolling my shoulders, I grabbed my tattered pants and rinsed them in the river, wrung them out, and slipped them back on. They were still tattered, but at least they were clean. Logan eyed me as I sat beside him, drying my hair with my hands. "No shirt." I shrugged. "Torn to shreds. Unless you want to lend me yours." He scoffed. "Yeah, no. I don't feel like getting out-muscled in my own clothes." I smirked, grabbing some rations from my bag. We sat down, munching on whatever we had left. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was enough. Unfolding the map, I traced our location. "Looks like we're at checkpoint 13. Logan leaned over, chewing thoughtfully. 17 is the closest, right? Shouldn't take us too long if we move now." "Yeah, we'll head there next." "Yeah, but do we even know what's waiting for us?" Logan asked. "This whole checkpoint hunt, we've to run around, clear them, fight abominations. What do you think it's all for?" I leaned back on my hands, thinking. The way I see it, the hunt is a filter. Filter, it forces people to fight, to move. You clear a checkpoint, you're bound to run into abominations. It's a risk. The ones who take that risk, they're the ones who stand out. They're the ones pushing forward. Logan frowned. "So it's about seeing who's got the guts to actually fight and survive." I nodded. "Pretty much. The people who play it safe will lag behind. The ones who take risks and keep moving, They're the real contenders. I finished my food, dusted off my hands, and waited for Logan to finish his bath. Lying back on the grass, I folded my hands behind my head and stared up at the clear sky. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and for a moment, I just let myself enjoy the peace. Surprisingly, I wasn't missing my home in the city. This forest training, despite the abominations and constant fights, felt oddly enjoyable. Maybe it was the freedom, the challenge, or just the sheer difference from everyday life. But I did miss my grandma. I was sure she was busy doing whatever she did. It wasn't my first time being away from her for months. Her work often took her to different worlds, and I had long gotten used to her absences. Other worlds. I'd read about many of the powerful civilizations scattered across our universe. The ones leading the charge at the front lines, crafting strategies to break us free from the Eternals' grip. Before the Eternals came, our universe didn't even have a name. It was just the universe. But the Eternals named their domain the Eternal Universe, as if it was the only one that mattered. That forced us to come up with a name of our own. The brightest minds of our universe decided on the Prime Universe, named after its mightiest galaxy, Prime Galaxy. My homeworld, Vathos, was part of the Blue Spire Galaxy. Compared to some of the superpowers in the Prime Universe, it wasn't anything extraordinary. But right now, none of that mattered. My goal was simple: survive, get stronger, and push forward. Soon Logan got ready as well, and we decided to move towards the next checkpoint. I looked up once at the floating rankings and found myself at top, and no change in the ranks below me. Come on, Steve, put some back into it. I smirked and thought. Logan and I moved through the dense forest valley, through the mountain range, keeping a steady pace toward the 17th checkpoint. The journey wasn't quiet. Straggler abominations lurked between the trees, forcing us into short bursts of combat every now and then. This is getting repetitive, Logan huffed, wiping some black blood from his shirt. Better than getting lazy, I said, rolling my shoulder. At least we're warming up. We kept going, taking down more abominations along the way, until the sun hung lower in the sky. Around 4 in the afternoon, we reached a clearing, and there, standing near a broken tree, was another person from our unit. Logan nudged me. Hey, look, we're not the only ones out here. I narrowed my eyes, getting a better look at the figure. Whoever it was, they weren't an abomination. That was a good start. The new guy looked at us and narrowed his eyes. Logan stepped forward and called out, Hey man, how have you been? Did you meet anyone else? I scanned him. Ash Holt, level 5. The guy stared at Logan for a few seconds, then shifted his gaze to me, before suddenly turning around and sprinting away. Logan and I stood there wide-eyed. Logan slowly turned to me, confusion written all over his face. I shrugged. Don't look at me, dude. Maybe he just didn't like your face. Logan snorted. What the hell is wrong with that guy? I chuckled, pulled some food from my bag, and took a bite. Who knows? Maybe he just doesn't like people. Logan sat down, leaning his back against a tree. Hey, Billion, do you think I should use a weapon? I glanced at him. Did you use one in your academy training? Yeah, a spear. Then you should stick with it. That way, you can get a class that complements it. I did bring my spear, but I dropped it from the parachute. I pointed at a thick tree nearby. Then make one. Tring, tring. Suddenly, the communicator's ringing broke the silence. Logan glanced at me. I think it's yours. I stood up and pulled the communicator from my bag. Weird. Why would they only call me? I muttered, answering the call. Hello, Billion. This is your Vice Commander June speaking. I straightened instinctively. Hello, Vice Commander. Billion Ironheart reporting. A soft chuckle echoed through the communicator. Oh, so disciplined. I heard Logan snort from behind, try to hold back his laughter. Anyway, congratulations on your current ranking. You're doing better than expected. I smirked at that. The commander is impressed after watching your fight at the first checkpoint, she continued. So, when the next command is given on the 13th, the danger level will be increased for your entire unit. Thanks to you. I froze, my smirk fading. And, she added, almost teasingly, he's preparing something unique for the next command. I glanced at Logan, who was mouthing silently, This bitch is crazy. I ignored him, my grip tightening on the communicator. June's voice grew more serious. I called to inform you of something on behalf of the commander. Your best friend, Steve Harper, is in danger. You might want to hurry if you want to help him out. He's near checkpoint 22, surrounded by 2 different types of abominations. My heart clenched. Steve is in danger. My thoughts raced. I recalled the map. Logan and I were between the 13th and 17th checkpoints, actually much closer to the 17th. To reach checkpoint 22, we have to pass through checkpoint 19 first. If I simply walked, I wouldn't make it until morning. But if I ran with everything I had, I might reach there by midnight. Just as I was processing the situation, June's voice came through again, more serious this time. Also, I'm not sure if you know, but one of your unit members, North Winter, is in danger too. She's currently at checkpoint 20. All right, that's all I wanted to inform you about. Give it your best. The line went dead. I lowered the communicator, staring at it for a moment. Suddenly, Logan shouted, "What the hell? Why would she tell you about North? That means that bald demon, the commander, is spying on us. He's listening to our conversations." He started pacing back and forth, running a hand through his hair. Well, that's true. If North is really in danger, June or Arcas could have saved her themselves. Damn, old man. What the hell are you planning by informing me about her? I looked at Logan and sighed. Why are you getting so worked up? Let them listen. It's not like there's a rule saying we have to respect the commander or vice commander behind their backs. Logan stopped and turned to me, looking completely flabbergasted. I shook my head, put the communicator back in my bag, and strapped it securely to my back. All right, Logan, I don't have time to waste. I'm heading out first. Take your time and be careful. I turned to leave when Logan called out, "Hey, who are you going to save first?" I chuckled. No need to think about it. Of course I'm going to save Steve. Brothers before. I smirked. Actually, I won't finish that quote, since they're listening. Then, without another word, I broke into a sprint, heading straight for checkpoint 22. As I ran, I activated my talent. My heart thrummed with power, heat building in my chest like a furnace roaring to life. I pulled out the map, giving it a quick glance to confirm my direction. Then, with a deep breath, I pushed forward, sprinting through the dense wilderness. My bare feet pounded against the earth, crunching leaves and kicking up dirt as I moved with relentless speed. The trees blurred past me. I leaped over fallen logs, weaved between thick trunks, and barely slowed down, my stamina holding strong thanks to my increased stats. After 2 hours of non-stop running, I finally skidded to a halt, chest rising and falling as I caught my breath. My body burned with exertion, but the rush of energy kept me steady. I reached for my bag, pulled out my water, and took several deep gulps. The cool liquid was refreshing, but my mind was already on my essence reserves. I focused inward. 6 out of 10. It was filling up nicely. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders, then instinctively glanced up at the floating cube in the sky. And that's when I saw it. Something had changed, and it definitely caught me by surprise. Level rankings. 1. Billion Ironheart, level 10. 2. King Holt, level 7. 3. Steve Harper, level 7. 4. Mark Salt, level 6. 5. Sarah Gibson, level 6. 6. North Winter, level 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. What had surprised me was the shift in the other names. King Holt and Steve both jumped to level 7. Steve, who was supposed to be in danger, had somehow leveled up. That meant he had been fighting. And if he had been fighting while surrounded by 2 different types of abominations, was he fighting on his own, or did things force him to fight? Taking a deep breath, I pushed all the 6 essence units to my dexterity to further increase my speed as I started jogging again, gradually picking up speed. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios: Steve injured, outnumbered, or worse, but I forced myself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help him. He's strong. He wouldn't go down easily. I remember the day I saw him, lounging in his usual lazy, don't-care attitude, sprawled out on the academy bench like he had all the time in the world. But I wasn't fooled. The bruises on his hands and face told a different story. His knuckles were scraped raw, and a faint swelling darkened the edge of his jaw. He had pushed himself too far during training. This wasn't like him. I frowned and sat beside him. "Hey, what happened to you?" Steve barely glanced at me before stretching his arms over his head, a casual smirk playing on his lips. "Nothing. Let's go get some food." I wasn't buying it. The guy never pushed himself like this, not unless something was seriously bothering him. He wasn't the type to complain, and I knew he'd rather act like nothing was wrong than admit he was struggling. But I could see through it. I knew him. He was trying to keep up with me, and he was too damn proud to say it out loud. He hid his drive beneath that introverted, nonchalant shell like it wasn't a big deal. But it was, and I respected that. My thoughts came back to present. I focused on my breathing, the rhythm of my footsteps, and the energy coursing through my body, pushing myself faster through the forest. As I pushed forward, the wind howled through the trees, bending them like they were whispering secrets to each other. I ignored it until the trees moved. Two hulking figures detached themselves from the darkness, their bark-like skin cracking as they stepped into view. Their arms were unnaturally long, fingers gnarled like roots, and their faces were hollowed-out knots, glowing faintly from within. Tree Troll, level 6. One let out a deep, guttural groan and swung a massive arm at me. I ducked, feeling the wind from the strike rush past my head. The second troll lunged, tried to grab me with its branch-like fingers. Too slow. In a blink, I closed the distance and drove my fist into the first troll's chest. The bark-like armor shattered, caving in as the creature let out a strangled, crackling sound before collapsing backward. The second one hesitated. Smart, but not smart enough. I didn't give it a chance to react. My foot slammed into the ground, propelling me forward, and I drove my fist straight into its head. The moment of impact sent a shockwave through its wooden skull, splintering apart. The glow in its hollow face flickered once before vanishing. Both bodies hit the ground, motionless. I exhaled, shaking out my hands. Weak. No time to waste. I stepped over the remains and kept running. Another 4 hours passed, and I finally came to a stop, gasping for breath. My legs burned with exhaustion, every muscle screaming in protest. My bare feet throbbed from pounding against the rough forest floor, and sweat drenched my body, dripping down my back and chest. My lungs felt like they were on fire, each breath coming in sharp and ragged. I bent over, resting my hands on my knees as I tried to steady myself. My heart pounded like a drum in my ears, the heat in my core still pulsing from my talent's activation. Even with my enhanced stats, running for this long at full speed had taken a toll. I pulled out my water pouch and took a deep gulp, letting the cool liquid soothe my dry throat. My hands were slightly shaky as I wiped my face. I checked my essence store. 5 out of 10. Looking up at the sky, I noticed the moon was completely hidden behind thick clouds. The air felt heavier, charged with an ominous energy. A distant rumble of thunder echoed through the forest, rolling across the treetops like a warning. I pulled out the map to check my location. Checkpoint 22 was close. Maybe another hour. I took a deep breath and pushed forward, ignoring the burning in my legs. They screamed at me to stop, but I didn't have a luxury. The night grew even darker. Thunder rumbled in the sky, a deep growl that echoed through the forest. Then the first raindrop hit my skin. Within moments, the sky opened up and heavy rain poured down, drenching me instantly. The cold water pattered against my face, running down my bare skin as I sprinted through the undergrowth. Each step sent splashes of mud flying, my feet sinking slightly into the softened earth. The storm was here, and so was I. The storm raged on as I ran, my feet sinking into the muddy ground with every step. Rain poured down in thick sheets, drenching me completely, but I barely felt the cold. I was close. I pushed forward, ignoring the ache in my legs. The wind howled through the trees, and thunder boomed overhead. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the world for a brief moment. That's when I saw it. Checkpoint 22. I slowed down, coming to a stop near the edge of a steep drop. Below me was a massive crater, a huge hole in the ground that stretched far and wide. The land inside was dead. No trees, no grass, just blackened rocks and jagged mounts sticking out from the ground. The rain hit the surface and turned into thin streams, washing over the cracks and crevices. Right in the center stood the checkpoint pillar, a tall stone structure almost 50 feet high, covered in thick lightning. It crackled and sparked, making the air hum with energy. At the top of the pillar, a glowing golden glass core rested, flickering like a beacon in the storm. I was surprised to see that it was a golden core. Oh, so it's a gold checkpoint. Ignoring the checkpoint, I scanned the crater, which was a massive battlefield now. The crater wasn't empty. It was filled with abominations. The first kind were tree trolls, huge, hulking figures between 9 to 12 feet with rough bark-like skin that cracked as they moved. Their long, gnarled arms swung heavily, and their hollow faces pulsed with an eerie glow. The second kind were golems, blackened rock abominations, their bodies covered in deep cracks that glowed faintly red. They were smaller than the tree trolls, but still massive, ranging between 6 and 9 feet tall. They moved stiffly, every step making the ground shake slightly. Both types of abominations were surrounding the pillar, some fighting each other, others wandering aimlessly. But that wasn't all. On a rocky mount near the checkpoint pillar, 2 figures stood, weapons drawn. I squinted through the rain, but they were too far from me to recognize. But they weren't Steve. I gritted my teeth and kept scanning the area. My heart pounded, and then I found him. On another rocky mount, further away, a lone figure stood, surrounded by abominations. Steve. I could make out that his clothes were tattered. His left arm hung limply at his side, broken. He was using his sword, swinging and slashing, knocking abominations back as they tried to climb up to him. He was outnumbered. He was injured. He was alone. I clenched my fists, my breath coming out in sharp bursts. The rain poured harder, lightning flashing across the sky. I could hear the growls and screeches of the abominations, the crackling of lightning, the pounding of my own heartbeat. I had to get to him, but between us stood a sea of monsters. I took a deep breath. I pulled up my status, my eyes scanning the familiar text glowing in front of me. Status. Name, Billion Ironheart. Race, human. Class, not applicable. Laws, not applicable. Level, 10. Talent, Generator 2. Essence, 7 out of 10. Attributes, Strength, 25.5. Constitution, 20. Dexterity, 20. Synapse, 24.2. Unused stats, 0. Skills, Essence Manipulation, Innate, Level 2. Synapse Boost, Innate, Level 1. I exhaled through my nose, feeling the tension coil in my muscles. 7 out of 10 Essence. Not bad. I had generated some during my sprint here. If I burned through it too fast in battle, I'd be left with nothing, so I will have to use and generate essence in the thick of the battle. Strength, Constitution, Dexterity, all solid. I wasn't at my peak, but I could fight. My synapse had also improved, giving me better reaction time and awareness. My gaze lingered on essence manipulation and synapse boost. I hadn't pushed these to their limits yet. If I timed my boosts right, I could enhance my speed and reflexes without wasting too much essence. I dropped my bag, pulled out the first aid kit, and secured it tightly to my back using the bandages. Then I whispered, "Power up." My heart thrummed, burning with anticipation, as if it knew a real fight was coming. I locked my eyes on Steve. He swung his sword with one hand, his movements sharp but strained. Whenever an abomination got too close, he kicked it down, trying to keep them from overwhelming him. But there were too many. They were closing in fast. It was time to let him know he wasn't alone. I activated my skill. Essence Manipulation. Essence surged through me as I directed it into my throat. Then, with everything I had, I roared. Steve. Thunder cracked across the sky, almost as if answering my call. For a brief moment, everything stilled. The battlefield fell into silence. The abominations hesitated. My eyes stayed locked on Steve. Slowly, he turned, his gaze searching through the rain until it landed on me. Then, with deliberate movement, he raised his sword high, pointing it toward the sky. A silent acknowledgement. I grinned. Let's begin. I planted my foot down and sprinted forward. My feet pounded against the muddy ground, splashing through puddles as I charged toward the crater. The cold rain slapped against my face, but I didn't slow down. I had fought tree trolls before. I knew their movements. They were slow but powerful. If I got too close, their long arms could grab me in an instant. I had never fought the golems before. I had no idea what they could do. It didn't matter. I ran straight into the battlefield. The first tree troll turned toward me, its hollow face pulsing with dim light. It let out a deep, creaking groan and swung one massive arm at me. I dodged the swing and, without stopping, closed the distance, driving my elbow straight into its jaw. Its head snapped back, and the force sent it flying, crashing into a group of tree trolls. My eyes scanned the battlefield, searching for a stronger opponent. Then I spotted one, a level 9 tree troll. Pivoting, I sprinted toward it, weaving through the chaos. Any abomination that got in my way was either dodged or sent flying with a quick punch. Finally, I reached it, channeling essence into my leg. I leaped, then infused my right arm with essence and drove the fist straight through its back. My hand burst out from its chest. The tree troll collapsed instantly. I grabbed its leg and yanked it free from the body. Testing its weight in my grip, I smirked. Perfect, gripping the torn-off tree troll leg tightly. I turned just as another one lunged at me. Its hollow eyes glowed faintly, its gnarled fingers reaching out. I swung. The thick limb crashed into its face with a deep, cracking sound, sending it sprawling backward like a broken branch caught in a storm. Another rushed in from the side, but I pivoted, shifting my weight, and brought the leg down like a hammer. The heavy blow shattered its shoulder, forcing it to collapse onto its knees before I finished it off with a brutal swing to the head. A third one tried to grab me from behind. Without looking, I spun, twisting my hips, and slammed the club into its midsection. It lifted off the ground, flipping twice before crashing into a pile of burned rocks. The makeshift weapon worked better than I expected. It was heavy, solid, and packed enough force to break through the tree troll's tough bark-like skin. I swung wide, clearing space around me, each strike knocking them down or sending them flying. They swarmed, but with every step, I smashed, crushed, and shattered. And then, I finally came across my first golem. I narrowed my eyes and scanned it. Gripping the tree troll's limb with both hands, I stepped toward it, twisted my body, and swung with full force. The heavy limb smashed into its chest with a loud crack. For a second, I thought I had done real damage, then the limb itself shattered. The golem only stumbled back a couple of steps. Faint cracks formed on its chest, but that was it. I stared. What? It was just a level 8, yet it barely flinched from my hit. Then what about the level 9 and level 10 ones I had seen earlier? I narrowed my eyes, feeling my heart heat up as my generator core worked overtime, generating essence. Clenching my fist, I channeled essence into it and stepped toward the golem. It swung its massive arm in a wide arc at me, and I did the same, matching its speed. Our fists collided in the middle. I held my ground, my muscles tensing from the impact. I pulled my fist back, stepped in close, and drove my knee into its midsection. Cracks spread across its rocky body. Without hesitation, I spun on my heel, leaped, and brought my foot crashing down on its neck. The force shattered the connection, sending its head toppling. The golem crumbled and fell. I scoffed and sprinted towards Steve. The closer I got to the checkpoint, the more abominations gathered. The number of tree trolls far outnumbered the golems, but most of the golems were clustered near the pillar, standing like silent sentinels around the prize. I shifted my gaze towards Steve. He was down on one knee, breathing hard. My eyes widened slightly. I took a deep breath and activated another skill. Synapse boost. Essence surged from my heart and flooded into my eyes. A green glow flickered in my vision as the world dulled. The chaotic battlefield seemed to slow, each movement clearer, sharper. I could feel the rain sliding across my skin, the distant vibration of thunder before it even rumbled. I watched my own feet strike the damp ground, splashing through puddles. Without hesitation, I funneled 4 units of essence into strength, pushing it to 29.5. My legs bent, power coiled within them, and I shot forward like a bullet. I had to be efficient. My stamina was already low from the constant running. My essence store was still charging. There was no room for wasted movements. I had to cut through them fast. A tree troll lunged at me from the side, its bark-like skin splitting open as it raised its massive arm to strike. I ducked under the swing, my body sliding across the wet ground as the rain pounded against my back. Without stopping, I twisted my waist and drove my fist into its exposed ribs, sending a pulse of essence through my arm. The impact cracked its wooden frame, forcing it to stagger. I didn't give it a chance to recover. Stepping in, I slammed my shoulder into its gut, lifting it off its feet and driving it back into another troll behind it. Both went tumbling down in a heap of snapping branches and splintering wood. Another one rushed at me from the front, its hollowed-out eyes glowing faintly. I grabbed a broken tree troll limb from the ground and swung it like a bat, smashing it against its face. The limb shattered, but so did its head, exploding into chunks of rotten wood. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the battlefield for a brief second. In that moment, I saw 3 more trolls charging toward me. I planted my feet and exhaled, my muscles tensing. I leaped forward, dodging a grasping hand, and drove my elbow into the side of a troll's knee. It buckled, and before it could react, I twisted and kicked it straight in the chest, sending it crashing into the mud. The second one swung at me wildly, its gnarled fingers aiming for my throat. I sidestepped and caught its arm, using its own momentum to flip it over my shoulder and slam it onto a jagged rock. The third troll was smarter. It waited, observing, its glowing eyes studying me. I could hear the creaking of its limbs as it shifted its stance. A loud crunch. My body moved on instinct. I leaped backward just as a massive black fist smashed into the ground where I had been standing. Mud and broken rocks exploded into the air. A scorched golem. I narrowed my eyes. Scorched golem, level 9. It lifted its cracked stone arm again and swung. I ducked, but the sheer force of the wind from the strike sent droplets of rain spraying into my face. I clenched my teeth and lunged forward, driving my knee into its midsection. Cracks spread along its body, but it held firm. I needed more force. I infused essence into my right arm and swung a straight punch into its chest. The impact boomed through the air, the cracks widening before its body crumbled to the ground in a heap of shattered rock. I turned to continue forward, but another troll blocked my path. I had no time for this. I surged forward, ducking low, and drove my shoulder into its midsection. The moment its body lifted off the ground, I spun and hurled it into the approaching trolls like a wrecking ball. They crashed together in a pile of broken limbs and splintered bark. A second scorched golem stood ahead, positioned directly in my path. Its glowing red eyes locked onto me, and it moved with slow, deliberate steps. This one was bigger, at least 9 feet tall, with deeper cracks along its body. I needed to take it down fast. I channeled a final bit of essence to my legs and shot forward. The golem swung down, a hammer-like strike aiming for my head. I pivoted, dodging to the side, and leaped onto its arm. My feet found grip on the cracks in its rocky frame as I climbed up in an instant. Before it could react, I cocked back my fist, essence surging through my arm, and smashed it straight into its head. The entire top half of its skull exploded, and its body crumbled beneath me. I landed lightly and exhaled. There were still more trolls in my way. I grabbed a fallen tree troll limb from ground. My body was tired, but I had no time to stop. I swung. The club smashed into a troll's chest, sending it flying back into another. I spun and brought it down over the head of another, splitting in half. I twisted, dodged, and swung again, clearing a path with pure, ruthless efficiency. The checkpoint was getting closer. Steve was getting closer. I pushed forward. Suddenly, the world rushed back to normal, and I felt Synapse Boost deactivate. I checked my essence. 0/10. I clicked my tongue in frustration. My body felt heavier without the boost, but I didn't stop. My eyes locked onto Steve, and for the first time, I could see him clearly. His condition was bad. Bruises covered his body, even his face. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, mixing with the rain and trailing down his cheek. His breathing was ragged, his movements slower than before. My blood boiled. Anger coursed through me. I clenched my fists and surged forward, dodging past the trolls instead of engaging. My priority was reaching Steve as fast as possible. The more I moved, the more my generator absorbed the energy around me, slowly refueling my essence. I needed to build it back up, but it wasn't that simple. There were too many trolls. Even as I weaved through them, a few still blocked my way. Some swung at me, forcing me to react. A troll dropped down in front of me, blocking my path entirely. I had no choice but to engage. I let my momentum carry me forward, stepped in close, and leaped, smashing my knee into its face. The impact cracked its bark-like skin, making it stagger. I grabbed its face with both hands and smashed it down onto the ground, splintering its head into pieces. I exhaled sharply and sprinted forward again. I barreled through the trolls, smashing and shoving them aside as I reached the base of the rocky mount. Without slowing down, I grabbed onto the uneven surface and began climbing, my fingers digging into the wet stone. A troll lunged at me mid-climb. I grabbed its arm, yanked it down, and sent it tumbling into the horde below. Another tried to reach up from the side. I kicked it square in the face and kept moving. Finally, I pulled myself over the edge and kneeled face to face with Steve. He was still on one knee, breathing hard, his sword hanging limply in his grip. His eyes flickered up to meet mine, dazed but sharp enough to recognize me. I grinned, shaking the rain out of my hair. "You look like crap," Steve huffed, barely managing a chuckle. "Yeah? Well, you smell like it." I smirked, pulling the first aid kit from my back and tossing it to him. "I'm glad you're doing so good. Here, use whatever you can and make it fast. I'll handle these bastards." He took the kit and started patching himself up. "Thanks." I stood up, my back to him, and kicked away the climbing trolls. My foot connected with one's face, sending it tumbling down the mount. I asked, "So how the hell did you get stuck in this mess? It's not like you to throw yourself into dumb situations. Even I wouldn't go this far." "Don't insult my intelligence by comparing me to yourself," he shot back. "Anyway, first, tell me how you even found me. Doesn't seem like a coincidence." "Nope. The vice commander told me about your situation." Steve's eyes widened. "What the hell?" "I contacted her for help, but she didn't respond." "Don't ask me, man. I have no idea what's going on in that bald demon's head." I answered, "Well, something is definitely up." He spoke. He fell silent for a few seconds. I turned my head slightly to check on him and found him struggling to wrap a bandage around his arm with just one hand. "Come on, dude. I'm literally right here," I said. He scoffed but didn't argue. I checked my surroundings, making sure no trolls were too close, then crouched beside him and bandaged his arm properly. The rain wasn't helping, soaking through everything, making the bandages slippery. The storm didn't seem like it would let up anytime soon, thunder rumbling and flashing light across the battlefield. "How did you break your arm?" I asked. Steve exhaled heavily, sitting cross-legged. "Those guys." He raised his hand, pointing toward the other two figures on the rocky mount, much closer to the checkpoint pillar. "What? You mean they attacked you on purpose?" Steve stared at me, his expression dark. "How would they unintentionally break my arm, Billion?" Steve muttered. "Yes, we were fighting the golems together. Then the trolls joined in, and since those two are from the capital, they teamed up and kicked me out, forced me to fight the trolls alone. That's why they're closer to the reward. I was the damn sacrifice." I blinked a few times. "Are we even allowed to do that? Sabotage our own?" Steve scoffed. "Well, I don't remember Arca's saying not to." I thought it over. Yeah, he didn't say anything about that. I stood up and walked back to the edge of the mount, kicking away the trolls that kept trying to climb up. Well, that makes things easier for me. Let them grab the reward, I'll just beat it out of them. I grinned. "Yeah, whatever. I don't care anymore, Steve mumbled. I've been fighting nonstop. I'm taking a nap. He lay down in the weirdest position, trying to fit his massive frame on the uneven surface. Dude, it's raining. How the hell are you going to sleep? Don't care. Fine. I rolled my eyes and turned my attention to the two guys on the other mount. Up until now, I had ignored them, my focus entirely on Steve. But now that I knew they were the reason he was in this mess, things were different. I activated my scan. The system gave me their details. King Holt, level 7. Michael Hightower, level 6. Oh, so you're King Holt, I muttered. He was ranked second in the level rankings. I narrowed my eyes at him, my jaw tightening. Just wait for me. I watched the duo fight. King wielded a spear with precision, his movements sharp and controlled. Michael, on the other hand, swung his swords wildly, effective but nowhere near as refined. They were clearly exhausted. Sure, they were closer to the checkpoint, but getting the golden glass core wouldn't be that easy. A level 10 golem and a level 10 troll stood guard near the pillar, along with several other lower-level golems and trolls. There was no way those two could just waltz in and claim the prize. If anything, the abominations had a better chance. A cluster of them was already pounding away at the pillar, their relentless attacks shaking the ground around it. I turned my thoughts inward. In my current condition, there was no way I could clear the checkpoint. I was completely out of essence and exhausted beyond belief. Even though I was stronger than anyone else here individually, the sheer number of abominations made it impossible to push through. The only way forward was to get stronger. And the fastest way to do that? Level up. I had already killed a lot of abominations and gathered essence. If I took down a few level 9s, I should be able to push myself up another level. I could generate essence while fighting, but the real issue was fatigue. That wouldn't just disappear by leveling up. I exhaled and kicked, sending another tree troll tumbling down the mount. I wish I had a big area of attack, I muttered. Something to wipe these idiots out in one go, so I could actually get some damn rest. Looking back at Steve, still napping peacefully despite the rain, I shook my head. Unbelievable. He really could sleep through anything. I exhaled and slid down the mount. Cracking my knuckles, I got to work. The tree trolls around the base were mostly low levels, level 6 and 7, nothing I couldn't handle. I moved like a sentinel, circling the mount and smashing down anything that got too close. Most of them crumbled after a single punch, or kick if I aimed right. I made sure every move counted. No wasted energy, no unnecessary swings. Just clean, efficient strikes. I got into the zone. Fatigue and aching muscles faded into the background as I focused entirely on my movements. My combat skills were sharpening in real time. Each kill felt smoother, faster, more precise. I wasn't just throwing power around anymore. I was refining my technique. And then, level up. Level 10, level 11. I let out a breath, my shoulders relaxing. The tension that had built up from exhaustion settled just a little. I climbed back up the mount and sat down next to Steve, letting my body rest for a moment. Looking up at the rotating projector, I noticed two changes. My level up and something else. North leveled up too. She was now level 7, ranked 4th on the list, just below Steve. Is she in a situation like Steve? The thought lingered for a moment. I hadn't gone to check on her, but it did worry me a little. I added 4 points to strength and 1 to synapse from the newly gained and used stats. Then, I pulled up my status to check my progress. Status: Name: Billion Ironheart. Race: Human. Class: Not applicable. Laws: Not applicable. Level: 11. Talent: Generator 2. Essence: 6 out of 10. Attributes: Strength: 30.3. Constitution: 20. Dexterity: 20. Synapse: 25.2. Unused stats: 0. Skills: Essence Manipulation, Innate, Level 2. Synapse Boost, Innate, Level 1. I clenched my fist, feeling the subtle difference in my body. My muscles tightened, denser and more compact than before. Even my bones felt sturdier, as if they had been reinforced. I wondered how it would feel when my strength reached 50 points. I wiped the water from my face and hair, then turned towards Steve. More than an hour had passed, and he was still asleep. I shook him. Yo, wake up. It's time to move to the checkpoint. Steve let out a long exhale as he slowly opened his eyes. He sat up, rubbing his face. He stretched his arms and rolled his shoulders. I knew there wouldn't be any peace with you around. So what's the plan? I crossed my arms. The plan is to get you to level 8 first. Then we'll target the checkpoint. He gave me a side glance. Why don't you level up first? I smirked. I just did. His eyes widened. He scanned me, then let out a groan. Fucking hell. I stood up and scanned our surroundings. Steve was still level 7, and to level up, he needed to take down a good number of level 7s and a few level 8s. The area around the mount was already thinned out from my earlier rampage. If we wanted stronger targets, we'd have to move closer to the checkpoint. I turned to Steve. You ready? He rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. Yeah. I glanced up at the sky. The dark clouds rumbled, and the rain remained relentless, drumming against my skin. Without another word, we dropped down from the mount and started making our way toward the checkpoint. As we moved, I activated my talent, letting my heart absorb energy and generate essence. I scanned the battlefield, locking onto a level 8 tree troll. I took off toward it, Steve close behind me. I sprinted toward the level 8 tree troll, my footsteps splashing against the soaked ground. Steve kept pace beside me, his sword gripped tightly in his right hand. His left arm hung limp, wrapped in bandages, a reminder that he couldn't afford to take a direct hit. We'll do this quick, I said. No complaints here, he replied, his eyes locked on the troll. The creature noticed us and let out a guttural roar, its bark-like skin glistening with rain. It raised its wooden arms and swung at me in a wide arc. I surged forward, ducking under the first swing, and slammed my fist into its side. A deep crack spread across its torso as the impact made it stagger. Go! I shouted. Steve dashed past me, blade flashing. He slashed at the troll's leg, slicing into the rough exterior but not cutting all the way through. It bellowed in rage and twisted toward him. I grabbed its outstretched arm and yanked, throwing it off balance. Steve, high or low? Low, he called out. I nodded and hooked my foot behind its knee, then drove my fist into its chest, forcing it to stumble backward. As soon as it fell to one knee, Steve darted in and slashed at its exposed neck. The troll snarled, trying to swat him away, but I stepped in and caught its other arm mid-swing, gripping it tight. Finish it. Steve didn't hesitate. He adjusted his grip and plunged his sword deep into the troll's throat. A wet, splintering sound filled the air as the creature gurgled, its movements slowing. I twisted its arm and slammed it down into the mud. Steve yanked his sword free, and with one final thrust, drove it through the troll's skull. The creature let out a final groan before collapsing. Steve exhaled heavily and wiped the rain from his face. Well, that was fun. I cracked my knuckles. We'll get plenty more practice. He huffed a laugh. Yeah, and next time, maybe I'll have 2 working arms. I smirked. Don't get too greedy. The rain kept falling, but the fight had warmed me up. I looked toward the checkpoint. 1 down. Let's keep going. I pushed forward toward a group of level 7s nearby. The first one barely had time to react before I crashed into it, hoisting it up and slamming it into another. Both crumpled from the impact. Steve followed up immediately, his sword flashing as he slashed their throats in one clean motion before falling back in step with me. And just like that, we tore through every level 7 and 8 in our path. I kept the pace relentless, crushing, tossing, and breaking anything that got in the way, while Steve moved like a shadow beside me, delivering precise, finishing strikes. Then I heard him call out from behind. I leveled up. I stopped, my fingers still wrapped around the throat of a struggling level 8. Without hesitation, I crushed its left arm and flung it towards Steve. Finish it off. Steve caught his breath, nodded, and ended it with a swift slash to the neck. Watching him fight reminded me why he had chosen a thin, sharp longsword during training. It wasn't because of any deep, philosophical reason. It was because he was lazy. He wanted to end fights with as little effort as possible. That meant learning how to efficiently target the throat and joints, making every slash count. He was a dexterity plus strength fighter. Move fast, strike with precision, and finish the fight before it could drag on. In stark contrast, I just wanted to smash things until they stopped moving. "How do you feel?" I asked, wiping the rain from my hair. Steve rolled his shoulder. "Okay, I put 3 points into Constitution. The effect should kick in soon." He exhaled and glanced at me. "What's next? Do we go for the checkpoint or deal with those two first?" I turned my gaze toward the checkpoint. 3 level 9 golems, 3 level 9 trolls, and 1 level 10 from both sides. The strongest force of the abominations stood between us and the reward. Compared to the abominations, those two were weak. "We're going for the checkpoint," I said, rolling my shoulders. "Let's see if they have the guts to come after us then." Steve exhaled and nodded. "Fair enough. How do you want to do this?" Steve asked. "I'll leave the trolls below level 9 to you. Everything above level 8, including all the golems, is mine." Steve nodded without hesitation. I checked my essence. 10 out of 10. Finally, I allocated 8 points to strength, temporarily raising it to 38, then activated Synapse Boost. The world sharpened in an instant, but more than that, I felt the surge within me. The raw power from the added strength coursed through my body, making my muscles coil like compressed springs. My grip tightened, my stance solidified, and my entire being thrummed with energy. I grinned, my legs bent, and I shot forward, plowing through the trolls in my path. Limbs cracked, chest caved in, each strike clearing the way for Steve, who followed behind, swiftly finishing off anything I left standing. Then, I reached my first real opponent, a level 9 golem. Rain pounded against my skin, streaming down my face as I locked eyes with the level 9 golem before me. My fists clenched, the power coursing through me, making my muscles feel dense and controlled. This was my first time adding such a high amount of strength at once, and the difference was staggering. The golem moved first, swinging its massive stone arm down at me. Too slow. I stepped forward instead of dodging, meeting its attack head-on. My fist shot up, colliding with its descending arm. Crack! A deep fracture split through its limb on impact, stone crumbling like brittle clay. The force from my punch traveled through its body, making it stumble backward. I didn't stop. I pushed forward and delivered an uppercut straight into its chest. My knuckles sank deep into the stone. Boom! The golem exploded into rubble. One down. I rushed toward the second level 9 golem. It swung at me, but everything felt slow, especially the golems. I sidestepped its blow at the last second, letting the massive arm crash into the ground, sending mud and debris flying. Before it could recover, I drove my heel into its knee, shattering its leg at the joint. It collapsed, and I immediately followed up by slamming my fist into its head with every ounce of force my body could muster. The golem's head exploded, and its body crumbled at my feet. 2 down. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, illuminating the battlefield in a brief, eerie glow. Rainwater dripped from my face as I turned to face my last opponent. The third level 9 golem was already charging, using the momentum of its massive body to try and ram into me. I braced myself, then met it head-on. At the last moment, I ducked low, grabbing its leg, and with a single heave, I lifted the entire thing off the ground. The sudden shift in weight broke its charge completely, and before it could react, I roared, spun, and hurled it through the air. The golem crashed hard into the tree trolls surrounding Steve. I didn't give it time to recover. I sprinted toward it and jumped high into the air. Essence surged into my leg as I twisted midair, and then I dropped like a meteor, my heels slamming straight into its chest. Boom! The impact cratered the ground beneath it, and its torso exploded. 3 down. I winked at Steve. "Yeah, you're welcome." He shot back, show off, before rushing toward the damaged trolls, slashing their throats with precision. So the level 9 golems are gone. That leaves the trolls. I grinned and shouted, "See ya," before dashing toward the remaining trolls. My skill was still active, and I wanted to take down as many trolls and golems as possible before engaging the level 10s. not that I feared them. My essence was generating rapidly with every movement, every kill, and I could feel that I was on the verge of leveling up. I barreled into the trolls, fists smashing left and right. When my fists weren't enough, my legs did the work. Their defenses weren't as tough as the golems, so I tore through them with brutal efficiency, rain and gore mixing around me. My bare feet pounded against the soaked earth in rhythm with the thunder flashing above. For nearly 20 minutes, I kept going, relentless. Then I stopped. My chest heaved as I sucked in lungful of damp air, muscles aching from exhaustion and overuse. The temporary strength boost had ended, and even my skill had deactivated. A deep, continuous throbbing pulse to my chest. Maybe the constant strain of generator was taking its toll. A message flashed before me. Level up. Level 11 dash, level 12. I exhaled and looked around. Scattered all around me were the shattered remains of golems and the crushed bodies of tree trolls. The battlefield was a graveyard. Then my eyes met the other duo. King was staring at me, fire in his gaze, his grip tightening around his spear. I could already tell what was going through his head. So I smiled at him, bright and wide, as much as I could under the rain and darkness. Then I turned my attention to the only true threats left standing. The level 10 golem, the level 10 troll, the final challenge before the checkpoint. Around us, the remaining stragglers were still being cut down, some by Steve, others now closing in on King and Michael. But my focus was set. I rolled my shoulders, feeling the fatigue settling in. Time to end this. I was already level 12, and this wasn't even a challenge anymore. I checked my essence. 7 out of 10. I ignored it. No point in using it for something this easy. Instead, I dumped all my unused stat points into Synapse. A subtle shift ran through my mind. The dull ache behind my eyes, probably from overusing Synapse Boost, earlier eased slightly, and my thoughts felt sharper. Step by step, I moved toward the golem first. It was still busy smashing its massive fist against the checkpoint pillar. Cracks spread across the stone where it had been hitting, but it would take much longer for any real damage. I came to a stop right behind it, and it didn't even notice me. Sure as dumb. I raised a hand and tapped its back. Knock, knock. The golem froze mid-strike, then slowly turned. We locked eyes. I gave it a crisp, military salute. Let's begin. Nothing. It just stood there. I frowned. Hey, are you damaged or something? That did the trick. It roared and swung its arm at me. Predictable. The movement was slow, at least to me. My boosted synapse made it clear as day. I crossed my arms in front of me and took the hit head on. The impact sent me skidding back across the rain-slicked ground. Ouch! I shook out my hands. The power gap between us wasn't huge, but my constitution still wasn't high enough to fully tank its blows. I clicked my tongue. Looks like I need to boost my constitution. If I funnel 50 points of essence into it, I should gain 10 permanent stat points. That should be enough to keep up. I grinned at the golem and stretched out my arms. All right, Rockhead, hit me with everything you've got. I stood my ground, letting it attack. Each punch slammed into me with bone-rattling force, and my generator talent roared to life, converting the energy and pushing my essence generation into overdrive. Not so great for my body, though. I gritted my teeth, ignoring the deep burn in my muscles. No pain, no gain, billion. As soon as my essence reached 10, I dumped it all into Constitution. The effect was instant. A wave of relief washed through me as my body began repairing the accumulated damage. Even the persistent throbbing in my chest eased. I can't let my Constitution fall behind, or I won't be able to fully utilize Generator's potential. I cracked my knuckles. The next punch landed, and I barely felt it. I smirked. Sorry, dude. Time for you to sleep. The golem swung again. This time, I dodged, using its outstretched arm as a springboard to leap up. My leg shot down. Boom! My heel shattered its head, and the golem collapsed into a pile of rubble. I exhaled. One left. I moved toward the level 10 tree troll. 2 solid punches later, its upper torso was nothing but pulp. I turned and glanced at Steve. He was still cutting down trolls, but there weren't many left. My eyes flickered toward the mount. King and Michael had stepped down, staring at me. I ignored them and walked toward the pillar. With the lightning-infused structure flickering behind me, I sat down, tilted my head back to glance up at the cube, displaying our current rankings. Level rankings. 1. Billion Ironheart, level 12. 2. Steve Harper, level 9. 3. King Holt, level 8. 4. North Winter, level 7. 5. Sarah Gibson, level 7. 6. Mark Salt, level 7. 7. 8. 9. 10. Steve leveled up again, reaching level 9. King leveled up as well. Everyone on the list was now level 7 or higher. I glanced at Steve. He was still fighting with only one hand. Evade, strike, evade, strike. That was all he was doing. Looks like he didn't put any points into Constitution. King and Michael had also joined in, going after the remaining tree trolls. I sat in silence, focusing on recovering while watching Steve fight. Rain pattered against my head, my soaked hair sticking to my face. 15 more minutes passed before Steve finally finished. He walked straight toward me and flopped down beside me, his chest rising and falling in heavy, uneven breaths. Neither of us spoke. We just sat there, letting the rain wash over us, the distant rumble of thunder filling the silence. Then I saw King and Michael moving toward us. I lifted my head, already knowing why King was here. I didn't need to be a genius to recognize his type. I could spot people like him from miles away. Finally, he reached us and spoke. "Hello, Billion. My name is King Holt." I stared at the boy. He was taller than me, with black hair, black eyes, and a long face. His build was top-heavy, broad shoulders, thick arms, but noticeably thin legs. The kind of guy who would never skip an upper-body workout, but conveniently forget leg day. I ran a hand through my rain-soaked hair, slicking it back as I rose to my feet. My gaze stayed on him as I spoke. "Yeah, and this is my best friend, Steve." King's eyes narrowed at that. He glanced at Steve, then back at me. He took a moment before speaking again. "I'm here to make a deal with you." "Oh, so you're just going to ignore it? What kind of deal?" I asked. "I want the reward from this checkpoint. In return, I'll owe you a favor." I tilted my head at that. What the hell is this guy talking about? Is he the emperor, or something that his favor is so special? I turned to Steve. "I don't know," he answered. I looked back at King. "Sorry, I don't understand." King blinked a few times, as if surprised. "What I mean is, I have my own ways to help you in the future, special ways that you won't get anywhere else, maybe only from the royal family." I held my chin and closed my eyes, pretending to think really hard. But my mind drifted elsewhere. North. Could I still make it in time to help her out? Should I ask the vice commander? I dismissed that idea immediately. That wouldn't look good. It was past midnight. North was at checkpoint 20. At normal pace, it would take 3 hours to get there. If I pushed myself, I could make it. It was the perfect opportunity to save the girl. It would definitely leave a good impression on her. "Billion." King's voice snapped me back. I opened my eyes. "So, what do you think?" he asked. "No," I replied. His expression darkened. "Why? I don't want your favor. Don't need one either." "Are you sure? You're going to regret this in the future." "Nope, I won't. There's nothing you can offer that I won't be able to get myself." He stayed quiet for a few moments, then scoffed. "You sure are arrogant. I hope you can keep this attitude after this 1-month training is over." I smirked. "I will." King turned and started walking away. "Hey, where are you going?" I called out. He stopped, glanced over his shoulder. "What do you want?" I pointed at his hand. "Your hand." He turned around, his brows furrowing. "What do you mean?" I smiled. "I mean a hand for a hand." Then I shot forward. In an instant, I was in front of him. His eyes widened, and he tried to step back, but my hand was already around his wrist. King struggled the moment my fingers clamped around his wrist. His instincts kicked in, his free hand shooting toward my arm in an attempt to pry me off. But I was faster. My grip tightened like a vice, and before he could react, I twisted. Crack! A sharp, wet snap rang through the rain-soaked air. King let out a strangled yell, his knees buckling as his right arm bent in a way it wasn't supposed to. His face twisted in pain, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to scream. I let go, and his arm dropped uselessly at his side. He gasped, staggering back. His breath came in sharp, uneven bursts as he cradled his broken wrist. I stared at him, unfazed. Michael took a step forward, his expression shifting from shock to fury. His sword twitched in his hands, but I was already moving. I blurred forward. Michael barely had time to raise his weapon before I caught his forearm. My foot hooked behind his ankle, and with a sharp pull, I sent him crashing onto his back. Before he could recover, I grabbed his left hand and, with the same ruthless efficiency, snap. Michael's scream was instant. His entire body convulsed as he clutched his broken hand, his breaths ragged and uneven. Rain mixed with the sweat on his forehead as he gasped through the pain. I straightened, towering over the two of them. You both seem to have trouble understanding the weight of actions, so let me make it clear. You touch my friend, I break what's yours. I glanced at Steve, who sat quietly. Then I turned back to King. Consider this a lesson in fairness. King didn't respond. He just glared at me, his breath shaky, his pride shattered along with his wrist. Michael was curled on the ground, groaning in pain. I exhaled and rolled my shoulders. Now get lost. Neither of them moved right away. But after a few tense seconds, King gritted his teeth and pulled himself up, his injured arm hanging limp. He shot me one last look. Michael followed, staggering to his feet, still cradling his hand. Without another word, they turned and walked away. I watched their backs disappear into the rain. Behind me, Steve's voice broke the silence. That was a bit too much, Billion. I know. Then why did you do it? He asked. I stayed silent for a few moments before answering him. This is a warning to those who think it's acceptable to test me by endangering the people I care about. Today it was King, but next time it could be them. And I meant every word. If Arcas had arranged all this, I didn't like it one bit. Steve chuckled and spoke. Ah, you're so cute. I turned around and stared at him. Come on, dude, I was being serious. That only made him laugh even louder. Fuck you. I muttered and walked toward the pillar. I stared up at the pillar. It was covered in the same flickering lightning as the previous checkpoint, but this one was taller, almost 50 feet high. My essence store was completely empty. It was time to fill it up. Power up. I grinned. My generator core pulsed in response. It wanted this. I bent my knees, muscles tensing, and launched myself upward. The first leap sent me soaring nearly 15 feet, my feet slamming into the pillar surface. Before gravity could drag me down, I kicked off again, propelling myself higher. Each jump sent a shock wave through my body as the lightning from the pillar surged into me, absorbed instinctively by my core. By the third leap, I felt my essence gauge ticking up, a slow but steady trickle as my body converted the raw lightning into essence. Then with the final push, I shot up the remaining distance, twisting midair to land at the very top. The stone trembled beneath my feet as I balanced myself. The lightning wrapped around me now, flickering like restless serpents. My body felt a little numb. I picked up the glass core and jumped down, landing below with a heavy thump. I exhaled heavily. I checked my essence, and it was full. 10 out of 10. Again, I pushed all of it into Constitution, giving it a permanent boost while accelerating my recovery. My body welcomed the reinforcement, the aching in my muscles dulling slightly. Steve, still watching the core in my hand, asked, "So what does it do?" I shrugged. No idea. I got a blue one from the last checkpoint I cleared, but I still haven't figured out its use. Do you know anything? Maybe your parents mentioned it. Steve shook his head. No, I don't recall them ever talking about something like this. What about your grandma? I exhaled. She just told me the army would handle all my needs. I handed the core to Steve, who started fiddling with it, then walked back to the pillar. Activating my talent again, I got into position and threw a punch at the structure. The moment my fist made contact, lightning surged into my body, and my core immediately began absorbing the energy, converting it into essence. A couple of minutes passed, and my core was full again. I funneled all the newly gained essence into Constitution, temporarily pushing it past 40. Heat spread through my body as my bruises healed, My muscles compacted, and my tissues rearranged themselves. I felt incredible. Let's do this again. I turned back to the pillar and went at it again. Another round of punches later, my essence filled up once more, but this time, something was different. A sharp pain pulsed through my heart. My body temperature kept rising, and even with the rain pouring down on me, steam began to rise from my skin. The water, already clinging to my body, evaporated in wisps. I pushed the new essence into Constitution again, hoping it would stabilize the changes, but the discomfort barely faded. My heart continued to burn. Maybe the constant use of my talent was taking a toll. Exhaling sharply, I deactivated it and walked back to Steve. Steve finally stood up, stretching. I spoke. Let's go. I need food in my stomach. We walked back to the edge of the crater where I had left my bag. I opened it, pulled out some food, passed some to Steve, and started eating. We sat beneath a tree, trying to avoid as much of the rain as possible. Steve glanced at me mid-bite and muttered, "Bro, you're eating too much. We still have over 20 days left." I nodded, chewing. "I know, but my body needs fuel right now. I'll figure something out later." Some minutes passed in silence. Steve looked up at the level rankings and spoke again. "You're so far ahead of everyone right now. I have to get ahead in the early stages since I'll need to stop leveling before I reach 25, I replied. He frowned. "What?" I shirked. "Grandma gave me a suggestion, and I want to try it before I hit level 25. "What suggestion?" I held up a finger to my lips. "I'll tell you later." Steve stared at me for a few moments, then nodded. He took another bite of his food and added, "By the way, North is pretty strong too. She's level 7 now." I raised my head to look at him. "That reminds me, when the vice commander called to inform me about you, she also mentioned that North is in danger." Steve froze mid-bite, his hand hovering in the air. "Why would they tell you about North?" I coughed awkwardly. "Well, I met this one guy, Logan, from the capital. I asked him about North, and we think the commander might have been listening in on our conversation." Steve put his food down and stared at me. Then, in a slow, deliberate voice, he asked, "So you're telling me that you openly asked some random guy about North, knowing full well that her grandfather might be watching you? And then, when you found out she was in danger, you ran straight here to save me, completely ignoring her?" I nodded. "Yes, correct." He threw up his hands in an exaggerated manner. "Great." I spoke again. "So, I was thinking, since I've already saved you, what do you think about traveling together to Checkpoint 20 to save her?" Steve wiped the rain from his face and sighed. "Well, sure. The commander already knows what you're thinking, so why not go and officially show him you're serious?" "Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. It'd be a great way to, introduce myself to North as well." Yeah. Let's finish eating and head out as soon as possible," Steve replied. Soon we finished our food, and I put the new core in my bag. After strapping onto my back, I pulled out the map, checked our direction, and we both started jogging toward Checkpoint 20. As we ran, I glanced at Steve. "So, what class are you planning for?" I asked. "Swordsman. A very fast swordsman," he said, his tone filled with excitement. "If I keep upgrading my class, someday it might become something like Sonic Swordsman." "Whoa, ambitious, very ambitious," I said. "What about elements?" "No elements. My primary focus will be strength and dexterity. Later on, I'll focus on sword-related laws instead of elemental ones," he replied. "What about you? Any changes to your plans?" he asked. "Well, yeah," I said. "I wanted to go for a Berserker or Juggernaut-type class, but now I'll have to rethink things." "What about a weapon?" "You still haven't picked one," he pressed. "I'll decide after selecting my class. Given my current situation, I don't want my first class choice to be dictated by my weapon. But I'll have to pick one eventually. It's fine fighting abominations barehanded, but against phantoms, that'd be way too difficult." "Any favorites so far?" he asked. "Definitely no swords, spears, or anything with a blade," I said. "That leaves hammers, staffs, maces, and other blunt weapons." "Suits you," he said with a grin. I chuckled at that. After some time, I turned to him. "How do you think I should introduce myself to North? Should I just jump in and save her, or wait until she asks for help?" Steve remained silent for a few seconds before replying. I think you should help her voluntarily. That way, she'll see you're genuinely a good guy. Okay, makes sense. What about after that? Should we party up? Should I act cool and aloof? Or be more straightforward? Maybe humble and gentle? Or, stop, he cut in. Bro, have you ever seen me in a relationship? How would I know how to behave? Just be your normal self. Maybe tone it down a little. I think it'd be a bad idea if you started challenging her to see who can do more squats. My eyes widened at that. Why? I think it's a great bonding exercise. We did it, and now we're best friends. No, he said flatly. You forced me to do it by constantly poking me and even stole my food when I refused. I looked away at that. While I was a kid, I had energy. Steve was lazy. I thought maybe it'd help us bond more by doing squats. And we kept sprinting through the forest. Excitement bubbled inside me. I was about to make a dramatic entrance. I was sure she'd be impressed. North's POV. I hid behind a rock, my breaths coming in heavy exhales. My right leg throbbed, claw marks ran across my thigh, and my ankle was snapped. I could barely stand on it. My hands trembled as I gripped my bow, exhaustion weighing down every muscle. I was drained, barely holding on, and still nowhere close to clearing this checkpoint. Leaning against the rock, I tightened my grip on my weapon and let my mind drift to the reason I had joined Unit 02 in the first place. I lost my father when I was very young. After that, my maternal grandfather became my father figure. He adored me, doted on me, but in his love, he refused to let me fight against the Eternals. Instead, all his attention went to my older brother. My grandfather shaped him into a sword while treating me like a fragile doll, something to be protected rather than a warrior in my own right. But I never wanted to be just a doll. I wanted to fight. I wanted to kill phantoms and abominations, to take revenge for my father, to stand beside my brother on the battlefield. So I forced my way into Unit 02, blackmailing my grandfather into letting me join. And now, here I was putting my life on the line, pushing myself to grow stronger. I had so much to prove. I wanted to be the best in Unit 02, to help my grandfather achieve his goal of pushing 02 ahead of 01. Though, knowing him, he never let me push myself too hard. I peeked out from behind the rock and spotted 8 to 10 guys from my unit fighting off the abominations. I barely even knew their names, but they were here because the vice commander had sent them. Apparently, I was in danger, and they had come to save me. I gritted my teeth. So all of you think you're here to save some damsel in distress, huh? I muttered. Not happening on my watch. Shakily, I pushed myself up, brushing my rain-soaked hair out of my face. Clenching my bow, I limped forward. Grandpa, just wait until the day I'm stronger than you. I swear, I'm going to rub detergent all over your bald head. Billion's POV. Last chapter ended with North POV. Both of us kept sprinting, taking breaks in between to drink some water and catch our breath. I could have kept going, but Steve wasn't as heavy on constitution. After almost 2 hours of running, the rain finally stopped pelting us, and the clouds began to dissipate. Faint moonlight broke through the sky. Finally, after another hour and a half of running, Checkpoint 20 came into view. It sat at the top of a mountain, the pillars standing tall at its peak, but it was only a blue checkpoint. The mountain was steep, and I could make out numerous abominations scattered along its slopes. I squinted, scanning them carefully. Brittle Tyrant, level 8. It was a hulking abomination. It was towering, muscle-bound humanoid with ice-crusted sinew and frostbitten flesh. Thick patches of glacial ice form along its shoulders and limbs. Its elongated arms ended in massive, blackened claws, while its lower body resembled that of a monstrous stag, its deer-like legs coated in jagged ice, each step cracking the ground beneath it. Twisted, frost-covered antlers jutted from its skull. But I ignored the abominations. What truly caught my attention were the people fighting the tyrants. Scattered across the mountain slope, members of Unit 02 battled fiercely, their figures barely visible against the dark terrain. I turned to Steve, frowning. What's going on? Steve was already staring at the mountain, his eyes scanning the fight. He pointed ahead. Look there. I followed his finger and finally saw her. North. She stood on the left side of the mountain, not too far from the top. Her uniform was torn in several places, her hair wild and unkempt, clinging to her face from sweat and rain. She moved with a limp, keeping behind the two guys fighting up close. She didn't stay still, shifting her position as she drew her bow. Her first arrow shot out fast, striking the tyrant's chest. Almost immediately, she fired a second one, embedding it right next to the first. Despite her injury, she kept moving, staying just out of reach while supporting the fight from behind. And yet, despite her condition, under the pale moonlight, she looked beautiful. The moon shone brightly in the clear night sky, casting a soft glow over the mountain. The stars stretched endlessly above, and the cold air carried the sounds of battle, metal clashing, heavy footsteps, and short, sharp breaths. North moved quickly despite her injury, keeping just enough distance to stay out of the tyrant's reach. She drew her bow in one smooth motion, releasing an arrow before shifting positions again. Dirt streaked her face, and her torn uniform did little to hide the fire in her eyes. But she was struggling. One of the guys beside her moved to help, but she pushed forward on her own. Stubborn, I muttered, a smile forming on my face. Steve let out a short laugh. Guess your idea of saving a damsel in distress wasn't that original. Huh? I see too many hero wannabes, and the heroine doesn't even want to be saved. I chuckled. Yeah, looks like old man Arcas is a real jerk. He got me good. Steve shook his head. So what are you going to do now? I stayed silent, my eyes fixed on the fight happening on the mountain. North wasn't just any fighter. She was one of the top rankers in her academy, came from a prestigious family, and had a grandfather strong enough to be feared. She was selected into 02, just like me, which meant she was no pushover. In watching her fight now, I knew one thing for sure: she didn't want to be saved. If anything, she was a damsel giving distress. Her fighting style was all offense, sneaky and relentless, dodging instead of blocking. She threw herself onto the tyrants. If I went in swinging, she wouldn't appreciate it. Then what would she like? Nothing. She wouldn't want anyone interfering. I thought, but I was just as stubborn as she was. And whether she liked it or not, I was going to leave an impression. Good or bad, that was up to her. A thought settled in my mind. If you don't want saving, that's fine. But how about a competition? I smirked and finally answered Steve, my gaze locked on North. If she isn't a damsel in distress, I said, stretching my arms, then I'll just have to force the damsel in distress now. I turned to Steve. Would you like to come? He shook his head. Nope, I'm good. Just give me your bag. I'll eat something. My body needs to recover. I nodded and handed it over. Then I looked at the mountain again and pulled up my status to check my essence store. 5 out of 10. The sprint here had generated some essence, but I had only activated my talent more than halfway through. My heart still ached slightly, and I didn't want to risk pushing it too far. I added all of it to strength, bringing it up to 36. All right, Steve, now watch your brother go and wreak havoc on the mountain under the moonlight. He shot back. You just go already. Don't make me puke. I ignored him and sprinted up the mountain. The first tyrant I came across was level 6. Without slowing down, I rushed forward. Before it even realized what was happening, I grabbed its face with my palm, lifted its entire body, and slammed it into the ground. Without looking back, I launched myself up the mountain, the wind howling past my ears. The moment my foot touched the rocky surface, I shot toward the next tyrant in my path. It barely had time to snarl before my fist drove into its chest, caving it in with a sickening crunch. Its body flew backward, smashing through a tree before going limp. And I didn't stop. My legs burned as I pushed forward, strength humming through my muscles. Another tyrant lunged at me from the side, level 8. It swung a massive claw, aiming for my throat, but I twisted, letting it pass inches from my skin. My knee slammed into its gut, folding it in half. Before it could recover, I grabbed its skull and slammed it against a boulder, shattering both in an explosion of dust and debris. Screams and roars filled the air. The other tyrants had noticed me. Good. I kept moving, tearing through anything in my way. A level 7 tyrant charged at me from the left. I met it head-on, driving my elbow into its face. Its head snapped back, body flung like a rag doll before it crashed down the slope. Another tyrant, a level 9, tried to ambush me from behind, but I twisted and caught its arm mid-swing. With a single pull, I tore it from its socket. It screeched in pain, but I silenced it with a kick that sent its head clean off its shoulders. The battlefield shifted. The roars of the tyrants weren't just from fighting anymore. There were screams of pain as well. The members of Unit 02, scattered across the mountain, started turning toward the sounds of destruction. They watched as I barreled through the monsters like they were nothing, cutting through their numbers in a straight path. Some of them stood frozen, weapons slack in their grip. I leaped onto a rock and spotted a group fighting 2 tyrants, struggling to gain the upper hand. Without a word, I launched myself at one of the beasts. My fist collided with its skull, snapping its head sideways. Before it even hit the ground, I spun and drove my foot into the second one's torso, sending it flying into a tree that split in half from the impact. The fighters stared at me, wide-eyed, sweat beading down their faces. I smirked. A level 9 tyrant roared above me, leaping from the side. I caught it midair, gripping its throat and slamming it onto a rock. The stone cracked under the force, and the creature went limp. Dust and debris rained down, covering the battlefield. Finally, I stood before North. She turned at the sound, her breath heavy, her bow gripped tight in one hand and 2 arrows in another. The tyrant she had been fighting roared and charged at me instead. I caught its wrist mid-swing, yanked it off its feet, and swung it like a weapon, slamming it into the ground. Once, twice, thrice. Then the tyrant was no more. I straightened, rolling my shoulders, and met her gaze. Green met brown. I stared at her face, large, expressive brown eyes, a cute oval shape, and her small nose, flaring slightly as she caught her breath from the battle. I stopped myself from flirting with her right then and there. It was hard, very hard. I wanted to make some remark, something, anything, but I took a deep breath and ignored her. Forcing myself to look away, I turned my gaze toward the top of the mountain. Tyrants were gathered there, slamming their fists against the pillar. I had no doubt the level 10 was among them. I didn't have much time before my temporary boost to strength wore off. I needed to finish this. Bending my legs, I pushed as much power into them as possible and rushed past her. I shot up the mountain like a cannonball, the ground beneath me cracking with each step. The tyrants turned at the sound, their growls filling the air, but before they could react, I was already among them. The first one, a level 8, barely had time to raise its arms before my fist crushed its skull like a melon. Another, level 9, lunged at me from the side, claws swiping for my throat, but I caught its arm, yanked it forward, and drove my fist straight into its throat, ending its life. More came, their roars shaking the air. I grabbed the dead level 9 tyrant by the leg, its massive frame still warm, and swung it like a club. The corpse slammed into the nearest 2, sending them flying like ragdolls. Another charged, but I twisted my grip and hurled the body straight into it, watching as both went tumbling down the slope in a mess of broken bones. And I moved toward the pillar, crushing heads, snapping necks, and breaking bodies. Finally, I reached the peak. The last obstacle stood in front of the pillar, a massive level 10 tyrant, its body thicker, its eyes glowing with something more than just rage. It let out a deafening roar and charged, shaking the ground with every step. I grinned. The moment it swung, I ducked low, dodging beneath its strike and ramming my fist into its gut. The impact sent it stumbling back, but I didn't give it a chance to recover. I surged forward, drove my fist into its ribs, and heard the crack of bones breaking. It howled in pain, but I cut it off with my third and final move. Grabbing it by the neck, I lifted it off the ground and slammed it straight into the pillar. The stone trembled from the impact, cracks spreading along its surface. Lightning flickered across the pillar, surging into the tyrant's body. It let out a piercing scream of pain. I grabbed its head and snapped it backward. Its body went limp, head lolling to the side. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders as I let go. Damn, I really like smashing things. I looked up at the glowing blue core trapped in the cage. Bending my legs, I shot upward, using the pillar as a launch point. In one swift motion, I reached the top, grabbed the cage, and jumped back down. I landed smoothly, cracked open the cage, and pulled out the core. Rolling it in my hands, I glanced down. Everyone was staring, wide-eyed, mouths slightly open. Even the abominations had stopped in their tracks, their gazes locked onto me. I smiled, then shifted my eyes to North. I kept my eyes on her, meeting her gaze squarely. She hadn't moved an inch since I rushed past her. The only thing she had done was turn to watch me fight, her hands still gripping her weapon. I brought my breathing under control as I walked toward her, step by step. A few guys moved toward her as well, their eyes darting between me and her, while the others were busy fighting abominations. They must have seen me heading in her direction. I stopped just in front of her and spoke. "Hi, my name is Billion Ironheart. I got a call from Vice Commander June asking me to help you out." I glanced around, but seeing that there are already so many people here to help, I think I'm not needed. Flipping the core in my palm, I added, "But it was nice meeting you." I met her gaze and waited. "Now what will you do, North? Get angry at me for taking your reward, or blame yourself for being weak?" She took her time, then exhaled heavily and smiled. "Thank you for coming, Billion. And I apologize that you had to go out of your way to get here. I'll talk to our commander once the training is over." I blinked a few times. Now, that is unexpected. And her smile is so beautiful. And her voice is so sweet. Damn, I smiled and winked. "It's all right. At least I got the reward from this checkpoint." She chuckled. "Well, I'm glad I was able to help." I nodded, glancing around, my mind racing for something to say next. "Come on, Billion. Think. My gaze drifted to her leg, and I stepped closer. "Oh, your leg looks hurt. Do you need a first aid kit?" I lost my bag," she stammered, avoiding my eyes. Before I could respond, one of the guys stepped closer. "Excuse me, Miss North. You can't let him take the reward." "Now, why did this idiot butt in?" I narrowed my eyes at him and asked, "What do you mean? Why are you the only one taking the reward? We were also fighting the abominations." I tilted my head, and someone else chimed in. "And you should share with all of us. Especially North. She was here before anyone else." I smiled, tilting my head. "Oh, is that so? Funny, because I don't remember seeing any of you fighting the high-level abominations near the pillar. And I definitely don't remember anyone else picking up the core. Just because you killed a few stragglers, you think you own the place." I shook my head, sighing dramatically. "There's only one way you're getting this core, by defeating me. So who's up first? Or do you all want to come at me together?" I casually spun the core in my hand, making sure they all saw it. Silence. They exchanged glances, but not a single one stepped forward. Of course they didn't. They had just watched me smash through tyrants like they were made of paper. Any thoughts of fighting me probably got crushed right along with those abominations. I waited a few seconds, then a few more. Still nothing. I scoffed. "At least have the guts to back up what you say. Otherwise, maybe keep your mouth shut." Then I turned to North. "So, first aid?" She was staring at me, wide-eyed. Oh, did I impress her? But just as quickly, her expression returned to normal. "Sure, but where's your bag?" she asked. I pointed down toward the base of the mountain. "There." She turned to look, then glanced from her injured leg to the far-off spot at the base. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She turned to the others, her expression serious. "Thank you for your help, but I'd appreciate it if you ignored such calls in the future," she said firmly. "I could take care of myself." With that, she turned to me. "All right, let's go down." She took a step forward, trying to walk on her own. I stayed beside her, matching her pace. She moved around, limping as she gathered arrows from the dead and the ones scattered on the ground. It was a slow process, but I stayed with her, watching as she picked them up one by one. I didn't offer to help, and she didn't ask, but whenever an abomination got too close, I took care of it. Once she was done, I took her bow and quiver, slinging them over my back. With that settled, we finally decided to head down the mountain. She managed a few steps before her injured leg wobbled, and she stumbled. I reached out, but she caught herself, her face scrunching in pain. We kept going, but the slope was steep, and she stumbled again. This time I was ready. I sighed. "Yeah, this isn't going to work." Before she could protest, I stepped in and scooped her up into a princess carry. She squeaked, her arms flailing before she grabbed onto my shoulders for support. What are you doing? I blinked down at her. I'm just doing what Vice Commander June asked me to do. Help you. Her face looked surprised, and she smacked my shoulder. This is not what she meant. I laughed at that. I smirked. Oh, she never specified how to help, just that you were in danger. And a leg injury is dangerous, right? She huffed but still held on to me for balance. I can walk, you know. I shot back. Yeah, and I can run, which means this is faster. She groaned, covering her face with both hands. This is so embarrassing. Without waiting for more complaints, I started walking down the mountain. She spoke again. Is this how you behave when meeting a girl for the first time? I grinned. Only the special ones. Also, I did sprint here through the rain and night from checkpoint 22, so forgive me if I don't look presentable. She peeked at me from between her fingers, then at my bare chest, before chuckling. Presentable? You look like you live among beasts and have never even seen a city. I smirked. Fair enough. But be honest, do you think girls would like this look? Her lips pressed together, as if she refused to answer. I grinned wider. That's not a no. She sighed. Whatever. Folding her arms across her chest, she refused to hold on to me and just stared off into the distance while I carried her toward the base of the mountain. As if remembering something, she turned to me, a playful glint in her eyes. You know my grandfather is watching this, right? I smiled. Yes, North, I know. That's why I said I'm just following orders, helping you out like a good soldier. She scoffed, as if he's dumb enough to believe that. I stepped over a few dead abominations I had crushed on my way up. North glanced at the bodies, then at me. How did you grow so strong so fast? You're already level 12. I looked up at the floating projector. She wasn't wrong. I was stronger than everyone here. But I couldn't exactly tell her about my talent, could I? So I said what I could. I work hard. She met my gaze, eyes sharp. Everyone works hard, Billion. Fine, if you don't want to tell me, then whatever. She looked away, staring into the distance. I chuckled. All right. I level up so easily because I'm special. Special. She looked back at me. I locked eyes with her, keeping my face completely serious. Yes, I have this urge to smash things. I'm always full of energy. I never sit still, and I love squats. Now imagine what a guy like me would do if you dropped him in a forest full of abominations. She blinked. So, you're saying you're just a violent person? I stopped in my tracks. Where did you get that from? I said I'm a workaholic. She tapped her chin. But I saw you fight. You were enjoying it. I shook my head. Not the killing. I like smashing. If they die while I'm smashing, I can't help that. She narrowed her eyes. And what does getting stronger have to do with squats? I gasped, opening my eyes as wide as possible. Everything. It has everything to do with squats. I adjusted my grip on North, making sure she was comfortable, not that she appreciated it. She was still folding her arms and pretending to be completely unbothered. But I caught the way her eyes flicked toward me every now and then. So, she said, raising an eyebrow, explain to me how squats help with leveling up. I smirked. You see, squats are the foundation of all strength. The secret to true power. She scoffed. That makes zero sense. I ignored her doubt and continued. Think about it. Squats build leg strength. Leg strength means better movement. Better movement means better dodging, and better dodging means fewer injuries. Fewer injuries mean more fights. More fights mean more levels. Therefore, I paused for dramatic effect. Squats equal fast leveling. She stared at me. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Is it? I wiggled my eyebrows. Who's level 12 here? She opened her mouth, then closed it. That's just a coincidence. I shook my head. No, it's science. Squats also improve posture, and a good posture means you carry your confidence better. Confidence makes enemies hesitate. Hesitation gives me an opening. Openings lead to victory. Again, squats equal power. She groaned. Stop talking. I grinned. But I'm not done. There's also the mental training. Every squat tests your willpower. You go down, and for a moment, the world is against you. Your legs shake, your muscles scream, but you rise back up. That struggle? That's the same struggle you feel when you fight. If you give up on squats, you give up in battle. and that is why I will always be stronger than my enemies. She closed her eyes as if in defeat. I can't believe I'm being carried by an idiot. I grinned. An idiot who does squats. She chuckled. This is the dumbest conversation I've ever had. I nodded. And yet, you'll remember it forever. That's the power of squats. I kept moving down the slope, my bare feet crunching against the stones and debris. Every now and then, I glanced at her face, but she kept looking away, stubbornly facing the other direction. I smiled. She's cute. So, you're from the capital? I asked, keeping the conversation going. Yes, she replied simply. I nodded, then decided to ask something that had been on my mind. So, what do you think our chances are of upgrading Unit 02's rank to 01? Since your grandfather clearly wants that to happen. She stayed silent for a few seconds before speaking, her tone turning serious. It's difficult to say right now. Things will change once everyone gets their classes. Some people will get a massive power boost from that. A few have families who have mapped out their classes and future evolutions, so they'll grow stronger as well. But ranking up isn't as simple as dropping into a forest and fighting however we want. Official missions will determine the rankings. We'll have to clear hordes and wipe out abomination nests. No one will be there to save us. People will die for real. Then, there will be direct competitions between units. If we want to surpass Unit 01, we'll need at least 10 people strong enough to go head-to-head with their top 10. I took in her words, thinking about what she said. Then I asked, how much can a single person affect the rankings? She turned her head to look at me. If that person is really, really strong, then yes, the rankings can be impacted a lot. I smiled. That's good. Really good. She turned away again, her expression thoughtful. Something was on her mind. A few more minutes passed before I finally reached the base of the mountain, still carrying north in a princess carry. Pushing through the trees, I finally arrived at the spot where I had left my bag and Steve. He was sitting with his back against a tree, eyes closed, his sword resting across his lap. At the sound of my footsteps, he cracked his eyes open. Then, seeing me, his eyes widened, far from his usual half-lidded, bored look. I smirked and winked at him. Finally, I stopped. Here we are. I carefully helped North to her feet, making sure she was steady, then guided her toward a nearby tree and helped her sit down. I turned to her and said, "Let me introduce you. This is my best friend, Steve. We both come from the same Avenue Academy in Cairo." Then I looked at Steve. "Steve, this is North Winter." Steve glanced at her and nodded. "Hi, North. Nice to meet you." North gave a polite smile. "Hi, Steve." And then, silence. I glanced between them and sighed. All right, let me get the kit. Moving to my bag, I stashed the new course safely inside before pulling out the first aid kit. Then I walked back to North and sat beside her. She immediately tensed. "What are you doing?" I didn't even look up as I opened the kit. "Treating your injuries." Her eyes flickered towards Steve, then back at me. No. I can do it myself." I raised a brow. No. I'm still on my mission. So sit still and let me help you. Also, you're not a kid. Why are you getting embarrassed? She smacked my shoulder. "You're the one who's embarrassed, not me." I chuckled, then gently lifted her injured leg onto my thigh and started treating it properly. After finishing up with her injuries, I leaned back and pushed myself up, stretching my arms. "You should sleep for a while and let your body recover." She nodded, and without another word, I walked over to another tree and dropped down beside it, letting out a slow breath. I nodded at Steve, a silent signal that I was done for the night. Then, without another thought, I let my body relax and my eyes close. My muscles ached. My mind felt heavy. Sleep was the only thing I needed now. I woke up to the sound of rustling leaves. My body felt lighter, the exhaustion from before reduced, but not entirely gone. The scent of damp earth and blood lingered in the air, a reminder that I needed a bath. Blinking, I sat up, my back pressing against the rough bark of the tree. The sky above was bright, maybe around 11 in the morning. I glanced to the side. Steve was sharpening his sword, his usual lazy expression back in place. North sat nearby, leaning against a tree with her arms crossed, eyes closed, but I could tell she wasn't fully asleep. "How long was I out?" My voice came out rough from sleep. Steve didn't look up. "A few hours." You snore, by the way. I scoffed. Lies. North opened one eye, giving me a small smirk. No, he's right. I blinked. Then I hope you guys enjoyed it. I stood up and stretched, rolling my shoulders to shake off the stiffness. As I glanced down at myself, I took in the mess, mud, dirt, dried blood, and bits of who knew what clinging to my skin. My shirt was long gone. Not that I thought I needed one anyway, and my pants were practically shredded into makeshift shorts. I shrugged. It was what it was. Turning to North, I asked, "How's your leg?" She tested it slightly before nodding. Much better than yesterday. Still needs another day to fully heal, but I can move. Good, I said, then looked between her and Steve. How about we find some water, clean up, and then eat? After that, we can start hunting for more checkpoints to clear. Steve gave a simple nod, but North pushed herself up using the tree for support and met my gaze. Actually, I was waiting for you to wake up, she said. I wanted to thank you for your help yesterday, but I think I'll go on my own from here. I frowned. Why? She held my gaze steadily. Because I don't want to hold you two back. You're both stronger than me, and I need to pull my own weight. If I stick around, I won't grow the way I need to. I tilted my head, letting her words settle before stepping closer. I think you're getting something wrong here, North. Just because I carried you in a princess carry once doesn't mean that's the kind of treatment you're going to get every day. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't respond. I continued, my tone more serious now. Yesterday, when you were fighting, I saw it, the hunger to grow stronger. And I can tell you right now, there's no one in Unit 02 hungrier or more hardworking than me. I extended my hand toward her. You want to know how I'm leveling up so fast, right? Then stay with us and find out for yourself. See firsthand what it means to play with fire and come out the winner. She stared at my hand, considering. I pressed forward. Didn't you say yesterday that we need at least 10 people who can go head-to-head with Unit 01's top 10? If we join forces, the three of us can work toward that goal. And who better to team up than the top 2 guys of our batch? I let that sink in before adding, don't you want your grandfather's wish to come true? My green eyes locked on her brown ones as I waited patiently. If she agreed, great, I'd get more chances to know her, maybe even impress her. If she refused, that was fine too. She wasn't going anywhere. She'd be in Unit 02 for the entire year, whether she liked it or not. Finally, she sighed and reached out, shaking my hand. Fine, I'll stay. But you're a manipulative person. She scoffed. I chuckled. Sure. So friends. She smiled. Friends. I turned towards Steve. He glanced between North and me before muttering. Yeah, whatever. I grinned and clapped my hands together. Great. Let's move. I walked over, grabbed my bag, and strapped it on my back. North put her bow and quiver on her back. She pointed at Steve. Why doesn't he look happy? I burst out laughing. Hey, Steve, she's asking something. Steve stood up, gave his sword a few lazy swings, then sheathed it with a sigh. I'm happy. I just don't want to waste my energy on smiling. North blinked at him, multiple times. Seeing her expression, I smirked. Ignore him. He's always low on battery. But trust me, he's happy. North sighed and muttered, Weirdos. And with that, the three of us headed toward the river. North moved slowly, careful not to put too much pressure on her ankle. Steve walked beside us, casually slashing his sword through the air like he was slicing invisible throats. And me? I was lost in thought. I needed to figure out my next steps regarding Essence. There were 3 things I wanted to accomplish this week before the next command came. June had said Arcas was preparing something, and I was looking forward to that. First, I had to level up my skill Synapse Boost. It was one of my most crucial abilities, and I had only scratched the surface of its potential. The way I saw it, this skill worked like a supercharger for my nervous system. Right now, it gave me bursts of enhanced reaction speed, sharper perception, and faster cognitive processing, but I knew there was more to unlock. If I could push it further, I might be able to increase the duration or even enhance my ability to multitask in battle. Activating, it made me feel like time slowed down, a few seconds of hyper-awareness where I could read my opponent's moves like an open book. But what if I could maintain that state longer? Or, better yet, What if I could push my body beyond just reflexes and into something even more extreme, like accelerating thought processing to predict an enemy's next move before they even made it? Second, while I was already using essence manipulation for essence infusion, channeling essence into different body parts to strengthen them, I still had no direct essence-based attack. So far, my ability had only played a supportive role. That needed to change. I had to figure out a way to attack directly with essence or create a new attack using it. Third, I needed to push my attributes up without leveling. My goal was to hit 50 in each attribute before reaching level 25, which meant I had to rely on generating essence and refining my body instead of rushing levels. I had a lot to do. Finally, I decided to rush to level 20 and later slow down from 21 to 25 to meet the attribute quota. Let's see how things go for the rest of the month. As we walked through the forest, we came across a couple of abominations. Steve handled them without much effort, cutting them down before they could even get close. North, meanwhile, kept glancing at the floating projector every few minutes. I tolerated it for a while, but curiosity got the better of me. "Why do you keep checking the rankings?" I asked. "Are you looking for someone special? Your boyfriend, maybe?" She shot me a sharp look. "I don't have a boyfriend." Then, as if to shut down any further teasing, she added, "And no, I'm not looking for anyone special. Do you know about Sarah Gibson?" I shook my head, then turned to Steve. Steve, he barely spared me a glance before shaking his head as well. I looked back at North. "Who is she?" North checked the ranking again before answering. "We're from the same academy in the capital. We had a bit of a rivalry going on. She's strong, and I don't want her to pull too far ahead of me." I hummed in interest and glanced at the ranking. Sarah Gibson was doing well. She was level 7 as well. "Oh, interesting. What kind of fighter is she?" "She uses a heavy greatsword, focuses on overwhelming strength, endurance, and sheer force in battle. She doesn't dodge much. She takes hits and keeps going." I raised an eyebrow. "Huh, sounds like me. I can see why there's a rivalry." I smirked. "But you know what? I like your style more." North chuckled. "Thanks. I'm honored that I managed to impress your highness." The sound of rushing water reached my ears before we saw it. Pushing through the last bit of foliage, we arrived at the riverbank. The water was clear, flowing steadily over smooth rocks, and the morning sun reflected off the surface in a way that made it look almost inviting. Almost. Finally, I stretched my arms, my muscles still stiff from yesterday's fight. "Time to get clean." Steve wasted no time, already pulling off his boots and stepping toward the water. North, on the other hand, stopped a few feet away, finding a spot on the ground and sitting down with her back turned toward the river. "I'll wait," she said simply. I smirked. "What? You don't want to see greatness in its purest form?" She scoffed. "I'd rather keep my eyesight intact, thanks." I chuckled and tossed my bag down. In a few moments, I was in the water with Steve, the coolness immediately washing away the grime and exhaustion from the past day. Blood, dirt, and sweat swirled away in the current. Steve dunked his head underwater before resurfacing and running a hand through his wet hair. "Feels good," he muttered. "Yeah," I agreed, rubbing the back of my neck. I was starting to feel like a walking abomination myself. Steve glanced at me and snorted. "You looked like one too." After scrubbing myself thoroughly, I stepped out of the water, rinsing my pants in the river before leaving them on a rock to dry. With nothing else to wear, I wrapped a towel around my waist and went to my bag. I pulled out my last clean uniform, then turned toward North. "Here," I said, holding it out to her. "Wear this after you're done." North turned her head slightly, but didn't take it. "No need." I raised an eyebrow. "North, your clothes are torn and covered in blood. You're literally a walking mess." She huffed. "Still, I don't need your uniform." I sighed. "Look, it's just a uniform. It's clean, and it's not like I need it right now." She stared at the uniform for a moment, then at me, and frowned. "Fine," she mumbled, snatching it from my hand. Steve, who had been quietly wringing out his own clothes, finally spoke up. "Wow, this guy really out here giving girls his clothes now. What's next?" "Poetry under the moonlight." North shot him a glare. "Shut up, Steve." She stood up and walked into the river to bathe. Steve and I sat down in the sun, letting the warmth dry us off. The cool breeze felt good against my skin after the brutal past few days. After a moment, Steve glanced at me and spoke. "So what's the plan?" I leaned back on my hands, staring at the sky for a moment before answering. "According to the map, we're somewhere in the eastern quadrant of the forest, about midway between the center and the eastern corner. I'm thinking we head straight toward the center, clearing all the checkpoints along the way." Steve considered that, then asked, "You think the next command is going to be around the center?" I nodded. It makes the most sense. Arcas is trying to push us to our limits. If the command was in the outer regions, people could take their time getting there. But if it's near the center, it forces us to move through high-risk zones. It weeds out the weak and unmotivated. And there's also something else. At the center, there is a volcano, and it is marked as very big volcano. Steve gave a slow nod, his eyes half-lidded in thought. "Sound like a pain." I smirked. "That's the point." And we stayed silent for the rest of the time, just quietly enjoying the warmth of the sun. The sound of flowing water mixed with the occasional rustling of leaves, creating a peaceful moment that I hadn't realized I needed. Then, I heard soft footsteps approaching. I turned around and saw North walking toward us, fresh from her bath, now dressed in my uniform. The shirt was a little too loose for her, the sleeves extending past her wrists, so she had folded them up neatly to her elbows. The pants were long as well, forcing her to roll them up at the ankles. Yet, despite the imperfect fit, she carried herself with the same quiet confidence as before. Her damp brown hair clung to her shoulders, the water catching the light and making it shimmer. Her face, free of dirt and sweat, looked softer somehow, her skin glowing under the morning sun. For a moment, I just stared. She looked beautiful. North raised an eyebrow. "What?" I blinked, then casually shrugged, playing it off. "Nothing. Just making sure my uniform doesn't look better on you than it does on me." She smirked. Too late. Steve, who had been quiet until now, looked at me and scoffed. "You are drooling." I ignored Steve's comment and focused on more important things. "So, let's have some terrible food, and I'll tell you about my plan." I pulled on my pants, which had officially turned into shorts by now, and we settled down to eat. The problem was, my food, meant for just me, was now being split among 3 people. At this rate, we'd have to figure out a new food source soon. As we ate, I filled North in on our plan to move toward the center of the map, clearing checkpoints along the way. She listened carefully and agreed with the approach. Once we finished eating, we picked the closest checkpoint in that direction and set off. The journey took time, but it wasn't uneventful. Every abomination we encountered was wounded first by Steve, then finished off by North. The goal was to help her level up as fast as possible so she could speed up her recovery. More than 2 hours later, we arrived near the checkpoint. It was another blue-level checkpoint, but we weren't alone. Another team was already there, using hit-and-run tactics against the abominations. I scanned one of the creatures. Horned bison, level 7. It was a big bison, nearly 6 feet tall, with rusted, pus-leaking horns growing in chaotic patterns all over its head. Its legs were covered in strange, tumor-like growths that pulsed unnervingly. I shifted my focus to the 3 fighters engaged with it. All of them were only level 6. Not worth paying attention to. My eyes moved to the checkpoint pillar. It stood in the middle of a small clearing, completely surrounded by a herd of these bisons. Among them was a level 10 bison, larger, meaner, and undoubtedly the leader. The pillar itself was already on the verge of cracking. Another hour or 2 of constant attacks, and the bisons would be the ones claiming the reward. I turned to Steve and North. "You two handle everything at your level and below, and avoid anything that you cannot handle. North, you provide cover for Steve and kill as many as you can as quickly as possible. Once you level up, both of you can go after the level 10 together." They nodded. North suddenly asked, "What about the other unit members?" I shook my head. "Ignore them." With that settled, we moved into action. Steve made the first move, dashing toward the level 6 bison. It snorted and lowered its rusted, pus-leaking horns, charging at him with heavy steps that shook the ground. Steve didn't stop. At the last second, he sidestepped, his sword flashing as he slashed across the tendons of its front leg. The bison staggered, its charge thrown off, but it wasn't down yet. It twisted its bulky body and swung its head, the jagged horns slicing through the air. Steve leaned back, barely avoiding the swipe, then pushed forward, driving his sword into the bison's throat. It reared up, thrashing, refusing to go down. Then North struck. She didn't fire immediately. Instead, she kept moving, shifting her position to get a clear shot. Her longbow stayed steady in her hands, her eyes tracking the bison's movements. As the beast twisted to shake Steve off, she drew her bowstring back in one smooth motion and released. The arrow whistled through the air, piercing deep into the bison's exposed throat. It let out a pained grunt, staggering. North didn't stop. She had already knocked another arrow. As the bison thrashed, trying to regain its balance, she adjusted her aim and fired again. The second arrow buried itself just above the first, driving deeper into its throat. The beast let out a final, wet gurgle before collapsing. They barely had time to recover before a level 7 bison charged. This one was bigger, faster. It lunged straight for Steve. North had already repositioned, keeping her distance. She moved carefully, favoring her injured ankle, but her bow was steady in her grip. Steve met the charge head-on, sidestepping at the last second and slicing across the bison's eye. It roared, blinded on one side, thrashing in rage. North didn't fire immediately. She tracked the bison's movements, waiting for an opening. When it twisted towards Steve again, exposing its throat, she released. The arrow shot forward, embedding deep into the soft flesh just below its jaw. The bison reared up in pain, stumbling. Steve took the chance. He dashed in and drove his sword straight through its throat. The bison gurgled, blood pooling from its mouth, and finally collapsed with a heavy thud. I checked North's bow. It was a sleek black longbow, just a standard weapon, the kind everyone received after awakening. It was nothing special, just enough to fight with until she advanced further. Weapons were divided into 3 tiers. Standard weapons, basic weapons with no essence connection. Good enough for combat before reaching level 25 and selecting a class. Augmented weapons, used from level 25 to level 50. While they had no special abilities, they were forged using essence and sometimes stored a limited ability. Awakened weapons. These weapons link to the wielder's class upon their first class evolution at level 50. Fully fused with the user's essence, they became personalized, unique to their wielder, gain special abilities, and grow alongside the user. For now, North's bow was just an ordinary weapon, but later, it would evolve into something far more powerful. I watched as the two of them kept taking down the bisons one by one, focusing mostly on the level 6s and 7s at first. North stayed at a distance, constantly moving, collecting her arrows whenever she had the chance while following Steve's lead. She timed her shots well, making every arrow count. Suddenly, she let out a triumphant shout. Hell yeah! Guessing what it meant, I glanced at the projector. Sure enough, she had reached level 8. The other unit members were fighting their own battles, but they kept their distance from us. I had no doubt they'd checked our levels and decided it was best not to get involved. Before long, North and Steve started going after stronger bisons. With her level up, North moved more easily. She must have added points to Constitution. I kept watch, making sure no high-level bison came after them. So far, none had. The stronger ones were all focused on the pillar, repeatedly ramming their heads against it. Another hour passed, and between the two of them, nearly 30 bisons had fallen. At this rate, they were both close to leveling up again. But the pillar wasn't going to hold for more than half an hour at the rate the bisons kept smashing it. After a short break to catch their breath, they set their sights on their first level 9. It was among the group ramming against the pillar. Steve moved first, slashing across the tendon of its hind leg. The bison roared in pain, stumbling before turning to face him. Steve stood his ground, his sword lowered, waiting. The bison snorted and charged straight at him. Before it could reach, an arrow sliced through the air and embedded itself deep into its left eye. The beast shook its head violently, letting out a furious bellow. Steve didn't waste the opening. He dashed to its side, gripping his sword with both hands, and slashed deep across its exposed flank. Blood poured from the wound as the bison staggered. Another arrow struck, this time burying itself into its right eye. The beast shuddered, its legs giving out as it collapsed, wheezing heavily. Steve stepped forward and, with a swift motion, slit its throat, ending it for good. Without hesitation, they pulled 2 more level 9s from the herd, executing them with the same efficiency. That's when Steve's voice rang out. Leveled up. North followed right after. Me too. I glanced up at the projection, a small smile tugging at my lips. Steve had reached level 10. North was now level 9. Only 2 more level 9s remained, along with the last level 10 boss. I shouted at them. Why don't you try killing the level 9s alone? Both of them nodded. Steve's expression stayed the same calm, focused, but I caught the flicker of excitement in North's eyes. She moved quickly, taking cover behind a tree. Her hands worked fast as she knocked an arrow, drawing her bowstring tight. I watched as she took a deep breath, her brown eyes locked onto one of the level 9s, ramming its head against the pillar. Then, with a sharp whoosh, her arrow shot through the air. I tracked its path as it embedded deep into the bison's throat just before it could strike the pillar again. The beast let out a guttural bellow, staggering back. Before it could recover, another arrow whistled through the air, piercing its right leg clean through. The bison reared up in pain, its balance faltering. The moment its head tilted back, a third arrow sliced through the air and buried itself deep into its eye. The beast collapsed with a final, shuddering breath. I clapped, impressed. 3 arrows, that was all it took. On the other side, Steve moved even faster this time. He sprinted toward his target, his speed almost blurring his form. At the last second, he dropped low, skidding across the back a level 9 bison. His sword flashed in a clean arc, severing the beast's left leg completely. The bison roared in agony, collapsing onto the ground with a heavy thud. Steve didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and, with a single swift motion, slit its throat, ending the fight instantly. Now, only one remained, the lone level 10 bison, still ramming its head against the pillar. Despite all the chaos, the deaths of its kind, and the clear danger around it, the beast didn't even flinch. It just kept smashing its head against the cracked structure over and over. We gathered together, watching in silence for a moment. Steve was the first to break it. Doesn't it remind you of someone, Billion? I let out a short laugh. Yeah, it's acting just like Cena. Steve chuckled. North frowned. Who's Cena? I shook my head and answered. A classmate from the academy. He was always butting heads with me, just like this bison. North hummed thoughtfully. So if Cena is the bison, doesn't that make you the pillar? I turned to stare at her. Yes, ma'am, sure. I'm the stone-cold pillar. All right, go ahead and take care of it. You shouldn't have too much trouble. I stepped back, giving them space, and the duo quickly went to work on the level 10. Steve exhaled. All right, let's drop this idiot. He darted forward, but this time, instead of going for its legs, he went straight for the head. As the bison reared back for another slam, Steve leaped onto its massive skull, balancing for half a second before driving his sword straight into the thick hide between its eyes. The bison jerked violently, throwing Steve off. He flipped midair, landing in a crouch as the beast turned, finally acknowledging them with a guttural snort. Blood trickled down its face, but it was still standing strong. North had already repositioned. Her bowstring was drawn tight, her stance steady. The moment the bison moved towards Steve, she loosed her arrow. It zipped through the air and buried deep into the joint of its front leg. The bison staggered, its charge thrown off. Steve saw the opening. He dashed under its body, slicing deep along its belly before skidding out on the other side. The bison howled, thrashing in pain, but it still refused to go down. North knocked another arrow. You're tough, huh? She aimed higher this time. The second the bison lifted its head, she fired an arrow straight into its exposed throat. It gasped, blood spilling down its front. Steve moved in, gripping his sword with both hands, and drove it into the bison's skull with a final, powerful thrust. The beast shuddered, then collapsed with a heavy thud. North let out a breath. That one was persistent. Steve wiped his blade. Yeah, just like Cena. I smirked, and the pillar still stands. I turned to North and pointed at the top of the pillar. Can you knock that cage down? I nodded. It's okay, but how do you know? My brother told me, she said. These are owned by the Army and the royal family. They're only given to elite unit members on probation, based on merit. Believe me when I say this, these things are rare. If my grandfather put them here, it means he's investing a good amount of his personal wealth this time. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, so what is it? North answered without hesitation. These are skill cores. The blue ones can level up a skill, while the gold ones evolve an existing skill. I blinked in surprise. Seriously? So, with this one, I have 3 blue skill cores and 1 gold skill core. Does that mean I can level up a skill 3 times and then evolve it? She shook her head. No. A skill can only be leveled up once using these cores, and it can only be evolved once. That's why these are given to elite unit members on probation, because they only work below level 25. Once you get a class, they become useless. That gave me a lot to think about. I had 2 skills at the moment, and if I was going to use these cores, I wanted to push them as far as possible on my own first. Then, I'd use the cores to break through any limits. And if I wanted to evolve both skills, I need to hunt down another golden skill core. I nodded. Well, that settles it. Our goal is simple. We hunt as many blue and gold skill cores as possible. Since I didn't do anything for this one, you guys can have it. Then I turned to North. By the way, do you have any skills? She shook her head. No. We were supposed to receive skills from our commander after the welcome ceremony and pick ones that fit the class we wanted. But as you know, we got thrown straight into this. She crossed her arms. The Army has a lot of good skills, and for elite units, they offer even better ones. I shrugged. I'm sure the commander has something planned. Maybe once our little 1-month forest vacation is over, we'll finally get to choose. I looked around at the massacre we had caused and the other unit members still engaged with a few lower-level bisons. Turning to the duo, I said, all right, let's move. We need to pick up the pace. I am sure other people will start clearing the checkpoints soon, and if they can't, then the abominations will have the cores. Also, I want to be as close to the center as possible before the next command. The duo agreed with me. Once North finished collecting her arrows, we sprinted toward the next checkpoint. It was the 13th day, and we were set to receive our second command. We sat in a small clearing, waiting. North was fiddling with her bow, absent-mindedly running her fingers along the string. Steve was flipping an empty water bottle between his hands, his expression blank. As for me, I was staring at the massive volcano dominating the horizon. The thing was huge, no, bigger than huge. It was enormous, towering over everything, a reminder of how small we were in comparison. The area around it was barren, stripped of life. No trees, no grass, just cracked, blackened earth stretching toward its base. The ground looked unstable, uneven, like the volcano had erupted recently. Even from this distance, waves of heat shimmered in the air, making it clear that this thing wasn't dormant. Our journey here had been slow. Along the way, we targeted various checkpoints, but most had already been cleared, either by other unit members or by abominations drawn to the essence cores. According to North, abominations were naturally attracted to the cores because of the concentrated essence inside them. That explained why we kept arriving at checkpoints only to find them looted or swarmed by lower-level monsters. After multiple detours and delays, we finally made it here. Personally, the journey had been dull. There hadn't been a single abomination above level 10, and at this point, I could take them out with a single punch. At first, North and Steve had been entertained, but after a couple of days, even they got bored. We had managed to find 4 more blue skill cores, bringing our total to 7 blue and 1 gold. But that was it. No more golden cores. We had hoped for more, and though we weren't exactly disappointed, the lack of progress made it hard to stay excited. Right now, we were sprawled out lazily for a different reason. Our food was gone. It wasn't supposed to run out so quickly, even with the 3 of us sharing. But During the journey, we had learned something about North. She was a glutton. She ate more than Steve, and Steve ate a lot. She ate often, constantly complaining about the food, but still stuffing it down like she was starving. No amount of warnings about our limited supply could stop her. If anything, she seemed completely unbothered. Her reasoning? My grandfather won't let me starve, she had said with complete confidence. And honestly, after seeing what he had done for her during the checkpoint hunt, I was starting to believe it too. There had to be a solution coming soon. I exhaled and laid down on the grass, hands behind my head. Not much has changed for me other than the level ups and progress I made in my skill. I still wore the same torn-up pants only, and I was clean and fresh. I had to be since North was around. I liked her company as well. She was cute and looked beautiful to me all the time. She was hardworking too. She practiced her archery whenever we were not hunting. She was fast on her legs, and her perception was high too. She was funny, passionate about killing abominations, hated Eternals, was hardworking, stubborn, confident, and surprisingly sweet when she wasn't complaining about food. I chuckled at the thought. I've been praising her a little too much in my head lately. Shaking my head, I pulled up my status to check my progress. Status. Name, Billion Ironheart. Race, human. Class, not applicable. Laws, not applicable. Level, 14. Talent, Generator 2. Essence, 10 out of 10. Attributes, Strength, 38. Constitution, 30. Dexterity, 26. Synapse, 36. Unused stats, 0. Skills, Essence Manipulation, Innate Level 2. Synapse Boost, Innate Level 2. I had leveled up twice. As we progressed, gaining levels became harder since the highest abominations I could find were only level 10. I allocated both level ups into Strength and Synapse, and used my Essence store to reinforce Constitution and Dexterity, gaining 8 permanent stat points thanks to my talent. Charging up Generator had become a routine by now. I pretended to be angry, smashing pillars just to absorb the lightning flickering across them. A bit dramatic, but it worked. Since Awakening, I had personally gained a total of 99 stat points, while a normal person without the Generator talent would have only reached 70 at level 14. I was nearly 30 points ahead, and I was confident the gap would only continue to widen. I had also leveled up my skill, Synapse Boost. I started using it more often, even while walking to get familiar with it. The new level enhanced my cognitive abilities even further. Focusing, I pulled up my talent panel to check my progress toward leveling up Generator. 100/200. Halfway there. If things kept going at this pace, I was sure I could level up Generator again before the month ended. Finally, I looked up at the floating projector to look at our rankings. I sat up immediately, muscles tensing as I registered the sharp ringing. Steve lifted his head as well, his eyes narrowing. Without a word, we both gestured for North to answer her communicator. She pulled it out from her shirt pocket, flipping it open with a practice motion. A deep, gruff voice crackled through the device. "Hello, soldiers. This is your commander speaking." I raised an eyebrow. I had expected June, but this time, it was Arcus himself. That meant something important. His voice carried the same energetic tone as I heard on the first day. "I am here to give you instructions for Command 02. Command 01 officially ends today, and your results will be included in your reports at the end of the month. I have been watching all of you throughout the past week, evaluating your actions and designing a profile for each of you based on your performance so far." I glanced at Steve and North, but they were both focused on the communicator, listening intently. Arcus sighed, his tone dropping into something almost disappointed. "And I must say, I expected better. Most of you are fighting abominations at or below your own level, which is unacceptable for elite unit members. That is not how soldiers of your caliber should behave. Once probation ends, you will either be leading a unit or standing alone as a one-man army, defending our world. If you continue to fight like weaklings, then let me make this clear. You will be the first to die." I nodded at that. He was right. In a real battle, there were no one-on-one duels. No fair fights. There would be hordes of enemies, waves of abominations swarming at once. If you couldn't handle enemies stronger than yourself, then you had no business being on the front lines. You might as well stay home and wait for death. Arcus's voice sharpened. I'm giving you the rest of the month to prove me wrong. Fight harder. Take on stronger abominations. Show me what you are made of. A short pause, then his next words made my face twist in annoyance. And now, thanks to Billion Ironheart, your fellow unit member, I have been forced to increase the difficulty of this task. He is so far ahead of most of you that I had to adjust my plans. You can thank him for that. Steve and North both turned to look at me. I sighed, shrugging. Not my fault, I muttered. What am I supposed to do? Slow down for them. Steve snorted, but North just shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. Arcus continued, unfazed. Your next task requires all of you to travel to the center of the map you received at the checkpoints. There, you will find a very, very big volcano. That volcano will be your battlefield. Now that got my attention. I leaned forward, intrigued. Tomorrow morning, the volcano will erupt once again, and from it, creatures will emerge. There is a powerful entity sealed inside that volcano, but it has the ability to create countless lower-level creatures. These creatures will flood the battlefield, and your mission is simple. Kill them. The clearing surrounding the volcano will serve as your battlefield. That is your arena. Outside of the clearing, in the forest, is your safe zone. If you need a rest, step out. Recover, then step back in and fight. For the rest of the month, your task is to kill, and kill. The more creatures you eliminate, the higher your ranking. The top 3 soldiers with the most kills will receive personal rewards from me, but what those rewards are will remain a secret. As for anyone below the top 3, you will receive reward from the military, but those will also depend on your ranking. My mouth fell open slightly. This was amazing. A battle royale. A real, endless battlefield where we could fight, rest, and fight again. This was exactly what I wanted. Now, I just hope the creatures were strong enough to make it fun. Arcus's voice cut through my thoughts. The creatures emerging from the volcano will range from level 10 to level 20. Most of you will need to push yourselves beyond your limits to bring them down. Also, the projector will no longer display level rankings and will instead show rankings based on kill counts. I grinned. Level 20? Now we're talking. Arcus paused for a moment before continuing. Since you'll have more than 15 days to fight and train, I've decided to provide each of you with system skills. These won't be basic skills. They'll be higher level ones, fitting for elite unit members. However, the skills you receive will depend on your current rankings. The higher your rank, the better your options. Your vice commander, June, will be arriving at the volcano soon to oversee the process. You have until the end of today to reach the volcano and claim your skill. If you don't make it in time, you'll be starting tomorrow without one. His tone turned grim as he delivered his final words. Our world, no, our entire universe is not in a position where we can afford to relax. We fight because we have no other choice. If we stop, it means we've given up. And if we give up, we die. There's no rest for us. We fight, we recover, and we fight again. We learn skills while fighting, we train ourselves while fighting, and we even live our lives while fighting. That is the only way we stand a chance at breaking free from this cage. The sooner you understand that you are nothing more than prisoners, the better it will be for you. The communication cut off. Silence hung between the 3 of us. That last part, it struck something deep. Who wanted to be a prisoner? Who wanted to be shackled in some endless cycle, doomed to wait for death? My hands clenched into fists. Right now, I just wanted to smash something. I stood up and stretched, rolling my shoulders as anticipation thrummed through me. Finally, enough enemies to smash. Enough chances to grind my skills and push them further. I agreed with what Arcus said. Fighting was the best way to grow. If I kept pushing myself, I could force both my skills to level up in real combat. At the same time, this was the perfect opportunity to experiment with essence and create an attack skill. The abominations would also help me level up my talent and push my stats past the 50-point mark. If I could do that, I'd have over 200 total stats, far ahead of the average soldier, who barely had 125. The gap was only going to grow wider. I glanced around. North and Steve were both lost in thought, no doubt planning their own strategies for the upcoming battle. Hey guys, I spoke up. We've got the rest of the day and night off. So what do you want to do? They answered at the same time. Train. I raised an eyebrow. Really? All right then, let's make it interesting. 2 against 1. Both of you against me. What do you say? North exchanged a glance with Steve. He stood up, grabbed his sword, and rolled his shoulders. Fine by me. North got to her feet as well, adjusting her bow. All right, count me in. But I want you to be serious. No playing around. Remember what you told me. I smirked. Sure, I'll give just enough to keep both of you on your toes. Before we could start sparring, Steve brought up the real issue. What about food? Are we supposed to fight for the rest of the month on an empty stomach? I turned to North. She threw up her hands. All right. Let me call him. Pulling out her communicator, she dialed. Hello. How's my little baby doing? Arca's voice rang out, and I cringed. North's face twisted in horror. Grandpa, I'm with my teammates. You know that. Arcas chuckled. Of course, sweetie. I even know who they are. Don't worry, I'll take care of them for you. I shot Steve a look. North groaned. No, Grandpa, I don't want you to take care of anything. They're my friends. Stay out of it. Arcas laughed. All right. Have I ever gone against your wishes? So why the sudden call? North hesitated before answering. We're out of food. You don't expect us to fight like this all month, do you? There aren't even fruits or animals in this forest. What are we supposed to do? Oh, that's my bad. I forgot to mention, food drops will start soon. Supplies will be scattered around the forest near the volcano. You forgot to mention that. North sighed. Whatever. Just inform everyone now. I'm ending the call. Bye, honey. Grandpa misses you. The call ended and we stared at each other in silence. I cleared my throat awkwardly, breaking the silence. So, should we start the spar now, or wait for the vice commander? Steve shrugged. She's not here yet, so we've got time. Let's start. I'm sure we'll notice if an aircraft arrives with her. I nodded and glanced at North. She was still avoiding our eyes, clearly embarrassed by how her grandfather had spoken to her. All right then, I said, stretching. Let's move closer to the base of the volcano. We moved toward the base of the volcano, the ground beneath us turning darker and more uneven as we got closer. The heat in the air was noticeable, but nothing unbearable. A fitting place for a spar. I rolled my shoulders, feeling the power coursing through me. North and Steve were strong, but I was on another level. I had more stats, more strength, and a far better grasp of my abilities. This spar was more for them than for me, but that didn't mean I'd take it easy. All right, I said, stepping forward. Come at me however you want. I'll counter accordingly. There are no trees or coverings, but North still created some distance from me and Steve. She knocked an arrow, her stance solid, eyes sharp. Steve took his sword in both hands, shifting his weight slightly. They were taking this seriously. Good. Ready? I asked. They both nodded. Begin. Steve charged first, closing the distance fast. His sword came in a diagonal slash toward my shoulder, solid execution, but too predictable. I sidestepped, letting the blade cut through air, and before he could recover, I tapped my hand at his wrist. A small push, nothing more, but it knocked his sword wide, leaving him open. My leg shot out, kicking him in the chest and sending him flying a couple of feet away. North, always watching for an opening, let loose an arrow aimed right at my ribs. I turned my body slightly, catching the shaft between two fingers. She clicked her tongue. Of course you did. Good shot, I said before throwing the arrow back at her. Steve was back on his feet, bringing his sword up in a quick thrust. I leaned just enough to let it miss before slamming my palm into his chest. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough force to knock him off his feet again. North didn't hesitate. Another arrow whistled through the air, this time aiming for my legs. A smart move. If I couldn't move as freely, she and Steve would have a better chance. I let the arrow graze my thigh, more out of curiosity than necessity. It stung, but that was it. That's all you got. I taunted. Steve pushed himself up again. We just started. I grinned. Good. He rushed forward once more, swinging his sword in a quick flurry of strikes. His form was better than the Steve I remembered from the academy. Less wasted movement, more control, but it still wasn't enough. I dodged his attacks effortlessly, letting the blade slide past just inches from my skin. North circled around, trying to flank me, but I was already aware of her positioning. When she loosed another arrow, I tilted my body slightly, letting it soar past me. Then I moved. One step, and I was inside Steve's guard. I grabbed his sword-wielding wrist, bent down slightly, placed my other hand beneath his shoulder, and with a roar, hurled him straight toward North. North dodged flying Steve and adjusted herself again for a shot. But I was already in front of her before she could release it. With a flick of my hand, I tapped the end of her bow, making her shot go wide. She clicked her tongue. I smirked. Weak. She tried to swing the bow at me, but I caught it mid-air and yanked it out of her grip. With a quick spin, I tossed it a few feet away. She cursed under her breath. All right, I said, stepping back. That was round 1. You two get 3 minutes to recover. Steve groaned as he sat up, rubbing his back. That was good. I pointed out. You landed some attacks. He replied, yeah, and you let them land. I shrugged. That's not my fault. North stretched her arms, rolling her shoulders. He's toying with us. I'm helping you improve, I corrected. She huffed, but didn't argue. 3 minutes passed, and they both stood again, looking more determined than before. Round 2, I announced. Let's see if you learned anything. Steve didn't charge in blindly this time. Instead, he and North moved in sync, keeping distance while trying to box me in. North stayed at range, her bow ready, while Steve positioned himself at an angle that would make dodging difficult. Better. Steve lunged, but this time when I knocked his sword away, he used the momentum to pivot and slash from another angle. I raised an eyebrow. Nice adjustment. I caught Steve's sword between my palms, absorbing the impact. It had a little more force than before. A split second later, North's arrow streaked toward my chest. I couldn't dodge completely, so I bent my knees just enough to let it graze my shoulder. Not bad, I admitted. Steve pushed forward again, mixing in feints to keep me guessing. North's arrows forced me to stay mobile. They were improving, but I still had the advantage. With a quick burst of speed, I sidestepped Steve's next strike, grabbed his wrist, and twisted, making him drop his sword. I picked up the sword and hurled it straight at North. This time, she didn't take her eyes off me. She simply shifted slightly, letting the blade pass by. I sprinted toward her. An arrow whistled through the air. I sidestepped it. Another followed, and I caught it mid-flight. She was already knocking the next one, her movements swift and steady. But before North could react, I closed the distance and placed a hand on her shoulder. Done, I said. She sighed. Damn it. Steve exhaled sharply. I really thought we had you that time. You're getting closer, I admitted. Keep this up, and maybe in a few months, you'll land a real hit on me. North gave me a deadpan stare. That's not encouraging. I chuckled. All right, another short break, then we go again. We went through 3 more short spars, each time switching up my strategies, forcing the duo to adapt on the fly. In the first round, I focused on relentless pressure. I never gave them a moment to breathe, staying in their space, forcing them to react rather than act. Steve barely had time to swing his sword before I was already past his guard, redirecting his attacks or outright slamming through them. Nor tried to keep her distance, but I closed in too fast, cutting off her angles and forcing her into a defensive scramble. For the second round, I flipped the approach entirely. I let them come to me. I stayed on defense, dodging, blocking, parrying. Every time Steve swung, I redirected his sword with the bare minimum effort, making him waste energy. Every time North loosed an arrow, I sidestepped at the last second, making her hesitate more before each shot. I wanted them to feel what it was like to fight someone who wasn't just stronger, but also more efficient. By the end of that round, Steve was breathing hard, and North's hands were trembling from the strain of trying to land a clean shot. In the final spar, I fought unpredictably. I mixed between overwhelming force and fluid defense, never letting them settle into a rhythm. One moment, I was in their faces, forcing them back. The next, I was retreating just enough to lure them into overextending before countering. I baited Steve into reckless swings and punished him for them. I let North think she had an opening, only to deflect her arrow at the last second, making her second-guess her aim. By the time we stopped, both of them were exhausted, sweat dripping down their faces. Meanwhile, I was just getting warmed up. As we rested, a distant noise caught our attention. Looking up, we spotted an aircraft soaring above us. Moments later, boxes with parachutes began descending from the sky, followed by a figure who leaped out right after them. The person free fell for a few seconds before deploying their parachute, gliding down with perfect control before landing smoothly a short distance away. It was Vice Commander June. She started walking towards us, but North was focused somewhere else. North let out a relieved sigh. Finally, food. I chuckled at that. Glad to know your priorities are in order. We waited for Vice Commander June to arrive. She wore the same uniform as us, though hers looked sharper, more refined. In one hand, she carried a sleek black suitcase, and her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun. Despite jumping out of a plane minutes ago, she looked as composed as ever. She approached us with a small smile. "Hello, everyone. I hope things are going well for you." I returned her smile and answered, "Yes, Commander. Things have been great. Actually, I was getting a little bored the past couple of days, but it looks like things will get interesting again tomorrow." June raised an eyebrow, then glanced at North before shifting her gaze back to me. "Oh, I thought with North around, things would already be interesting, but I suppose you were still bored." I blinked. Damn. Out of the corner of my eye, I stole a glance at North. Her expression was unreadable, no reaction at all. June chuckled, clearly amused, and moved on. "All right, that aside, I'm here to help you select your system skills. And since you three are at the top of the rankings, we'll begin with you." She placed the black suitcase on the ground, clicked it open, and pulled out a sleek black tablet. It was different from anything I'd seen before, thin, but emanating a faint pulse of energy, like it was alive in some way. June continued, "I'm sure you've all heard about the importance of skills, especially when selecting your class. The skills you choose and how you develop them will play a role in the kind of class options you receive. Of course, your stat distribution also affects this." We nodded. That was something drilled into us back at the academy. The system evaluated everything, how we fought, what we excelled at, and even our natural tendencies before offering us a class. June continued, "There are two types of skills. The first are skills you acquire on your own, either by obtaining a skill core or by training in a technique until the system acknowledges it. The second are class skills, which are given by the system once you acquire or evolve your class. But remember, every skill starts at level 1. To improve it, you'll have to put in the effort. You can evolve your skills in two ways, either by using a gold skill core or by developing a unique variation of the skill yourself. If the system recognizes your innovation, it will evolve the skill naturally. Additionally, you can fuse skills. If you combine two or more compatible skills and use them together consistently, the system may register them as a new ability. Alternatively, you can fuse skills when evolving your class." She paused for a moment before adding, "Your first class evolution happens at level 50. Your second evolution, both for class and race, happens at level 100. Any questions?" I wasted no time voicing the question that had been nagging at the back of my mind. How long does it usually take for the system to acknowledge a skill we develop on our own? June nodded, already expecting that kind of question. "It depends. The simpler the skill, the longer it takes for the system to recognize it. For example, you can't just keep swinging your sword and expect the system to register it as a skill. But if you integrate those slashes with proper footwork, leverage your stats, or apply some unique technique, the system is more likely to acknowledge it sooner." That made sense, though it also meant I couldn't just brute force my way into getting recognized skills. I followed up with another question. "Do skill levels have a cap before they require evolution?" June chuckled lightly. "Already thinking of evolving skills, huh? Well, different skills have different level caps. But once you hit the limit, the skill will display max in your profile, meaning it won't grow further unless evolved." I nodded. That meant I couldn't just keep grinding a skill forever. At some point, I'd have to push it to the next stage. How different does a skill need to be for the system to recognize an evolution? June tilted her head slightly, as if considering how to phrase her response. A skill needs to advance to the next tier of complexity. Let's take an archery skill as an example. Say you have Power Shot, which lets you fire an arrow with increased force. If you simply shoot stronger arrows or increase the speed, that's just improving the skill, not evolving it. But if you refine it into something like explosive shot, where the impact creates a concussive blast, that would be considered an evolution. The skill needs to gain a new, distinct property beyond just being a stronger version of itself. I absorbed that information, already thinking of ways I could push my own skills past their limits. Steve leaned forward slightly, his curiosity clear. You mentioned race evolution. Do we get multiple options, or is there only one choice? June nodded. You'll have multiple options. Your base race will remain human, but depending on your achievements, stats, and combat style, you'll get different evolution paths. Some might enhance your physical abilities, others might boost your affinity with certain elements, or even grant special traits. It all depends on how you've developed by the time you hit level 100. That was interesting. I made a mental note to ask more about race evolutions later, but for now, no one else seemed to have questions. June clapped her hands. All right, since we're done with questions, let's get started. Billion, you're up first. Place your hand on the tablet. Once your system verifies you, it'll generate skill options for you. The commander personally selected a few high-level skills for you, but remember they all start at level 1. It's up to you to train and evolve them. I nodded and stepped forward. June tapped a few buttons on the tablet, and a circular glyph lit up on its surface. I placed my hand on it. The moment I did, a faint tingling spread through my palm as if something were scanning me. A second later, system messages flashed before my eyes. Generating skill list. Choose one skill from the list below. Attack skills. Titan's Grip increases grip strength and allows for bone-crushing holds. Internal Burst. Strikes cause internal damage, ignoring a portion of defense. Brutal Rend. A claw-like tearing strike that can break armor or flesh. Seismic Fist. A charge punch that releases all stored force on impact. Crater Smash. A downward slam that creates a shockwave upon landing. Defense skills. Ironhide. Temporarily hardens muscles, reducing incoming damage. Steel Guard. Reduces stagger and knockback from enemy attacks. Pain Conversion. A portion of damage taken is converted into temporary attack power. Big Stance. Enhances resistance to all types of impact damage. Enhanced Core. Increases passive endurance, reducing fatigue buildup. Movement skills. Bulldozer Charge. A full-force sprint that knocks aside anything in the way. Blink Step. A quick burst movement that allows rapid repositioning. Rebound Leap. Uses the force of an impact to launch in another direction. Momentum Shift. Instantly reverses direction mid-motion without losing speed. Charged Leap. A powerful jump that can be used to attack from above. Support skills. Adrenaline Surge. Briefly ignores pain and exhaustion, allowing continued combat. Battle Trance. Enter a heightened state of focus, improving reaction speed. Second Wind. Restores a burst of stamina when dropping below a health threshold. War Cry. A roar that boosts allies' morale and slightly weakens enemies. Crimson Recovery. Heals slightly with every successful attack landed. I raised an eyebrow as I scanned the list of skills. They were all solid choices, perfectly suited for my fighting style. I could already imagine what was going through Arcus's head when he picked them. He probably assumed I was aiming for a Berserker or some kind of high warrior class. I focused only on the attack skills, completely ignoring the other 3 categories. I already had 2 support skills, and for now, I wasn't too concerned with defense or movement. That left me with pure offense. Titan's Grip was the first to go. I wasn't the grappling type. I preferred smashing and explosive power over holds. Next, I eliminated Brutal Rend. Claw-based attacks weren't my thing. I fought with my fists. Crater Smash was tempting, but it seemed better suited for axe kicks, and I wasn't focusing on kicks right now. That left me with 2 options: Internal Burst and Seismic Fist. Now, I just had to decide which one fit me best. I carefully weighed my options. Both skills were burst damage attacks, one focused on internal damage, while the other stored force for a single, devastating finishing move. But there was something else to consider: essence. I had been planning to create an attack skill using essence manipulation, but with these skills I wouldn't have to start from scratch. I could take one of them and try applying essence to it instead. Between the two, Seismic Fist seemed like the better choice. It was simpler in concept and gave me more room to experiment with essence. Internal Burst felt too specialized. I wasn't sure how well it would integrate with my plans. Decision made, I mentally selected Seismic Fist. Skill acquired. Seismic Fist, level 1. And I felt information gather inside my head about the skill. I remained silent for a few seconds going over the skill and its usage. Next, I focused on the skill, eager to read its description. Seismic Fist, a technique that focuses and compresses raw power into a single devastating strike. By channeling and concentrating strength into one punch, the force is stored within the muscles for an instant before being unleashed on impact. I grinned. That looked solid. A skill I could work with. More importantly, a skill I could experiment with using essence. Ideas were already bouncing around in my head, different ways to push it beyond its limits. June's voice pulled me back. It seems like you've made your choice. Now let's move on. Let your friends select their skills. I nodded and stepped aside as Steve moved forward. We waited a couple of minutes before he was done. Then it was North's turn. She pressed her hand against the tablet, and I couldn't help but wonder what kind of skill would she pick. I was sure she'd go for an attack skill, but would she focus on strength or speed? That was the real question. A few minutes later, she stepped back, her choice made. June nodded, tapped a few things on the tablet, and placed it back in a box. All right, you three are done. Now I just have to wait for the rest of the unit. There are about 20 more around the volcano, so they should be arriving soon. I stepped forward and asked the question that had been on my mind. Vice Commander, how do I compare to Unit 01 in terms of strength and level? I'm sure you see my fights. Steve and North perked up, clearly interested in the answer. June smiled slightly. Well, Billion, since I'm also part of Unit 02, I'll be honest with you. As of today, across all the elite units, you rank in the top 3. The other 2 are from the royal family, so they're naturally expected to grow stronger. But you've definitely surprised both me and the commander. I furrowed my brow. Top 3? That wasn't good enough. Considering the advantage my talent gave me, I expected to be ahead of everyone. It seemed like I needed to push harder. I nodded. Understood. I'll get to the top. North crossed her arms. It won't be that easy, Billion. Once people start selecting their classes, some will progress faster than others. I smirked. You should have more confidence in me, North. I don't lose. In fact, I've never tasted defeat in my life. Right, Steve? Steve shook his head and responded. No, you've been defeated. Multiple times. I facepalmed. I thought he'd back me up as my brother-in-arms, but I clearly expected too much. June chuckled. All right, it was nice meeting you all. I'll be heading out now. See you later. With that, she walked away. I stretched and glanced at the crates that had been dropped earlier. Let's grab our food supply and eat something. We moved toward one of the crates lying near a crater. I picked it up and carried it back to our resting area. We decided that from now until the end of the month, we'd be using this spot as our camp. Steve pried the box open. It was bigger than I expected, about 3 feet by 3 feet. Inside, we found an assortment of food, bottled water, and beverages. I clapped my hands. Wow, beautiful. North nodded approvingly. Excellent. Let's not waste time and dig in. We each grabbed some food, sat down, and started eating. Half an hour later, we leaned back, satisfied. I looked at Steve. So what skill did you get? Burst Flash, he said. It's a movement skill that lets me chain burst movements while fighting. Fits my style pretty well. I nodded, then turned to North. What about you? She took a sip of water before answering. Explosive shot. It adds extra force behind my arrows. I nodded again. Not sure if you guys care, but I picked Seismic Fist. It's basically an explosive finisher. North chuckled. Sounds like you. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Steve stood up and stretched. All right, I'm going to go practice my skill. See you at dinner. As Steve walked off, the silence settled between North and me. I glanced at her, half expecting her to get up and follow him, but she stayed put, calmly nibbling on a piece of dried fruit. That's when it hit me. Ever since North joined our group, we had somehow always avoided being alone together. Steve had always been there whether during training, traveling, or even just eating. But now, it was just the two of us, and for some reason, that fact made me more aware of everything. The quiet stretched, and I started overthinking. How did I come across to her? What kind of impression did I leave? I had never really considered it before, but now that I did, I realized something. I was always walking around barefoot. No shirt, just a pair of torn, dirt-stained pants. My body was constantly on display, muscular and rough from training and battle. Did she think I was some kind of wild animal? Some brute who barely remembered how to act civilized? I resisted the urge to glance at myself and see if I looked worse than usual. North suddenly shifted, tucking her legs under her as she leaned back on the tree. Her gaze flickered toward me for a brief second before she looked away, staring at the sky. I caught something in her expression. Was that hesitation? I cleared my throat, trying to break the tension. So, you think the food supply will last? She blinked, clearly surprised by the question. If we ration properly, yeah. I chuckled. Good point. Another pause. More silence. I wasn't used to this. Fighting, training, strategizing, I could handle all of that. But sitting here, being aware of every tiny shift in the air, every subtle glance, every unspoken word, it was unfamiliar territory. I decided to just say it. You know, we've never really been alone together before. North stilled. Her fingers played with a loose thread on her sleeve. Then she gave a small, lopsided smile. Yeah, I noticed. I tilted my head. You did. She shrugged. Of course. You and Steve are always together. And when I joined, it just never happened. Not until now. That meant she had thought about it too. I didn't know why, but that realization made my heart beat a little harder. I looked away, staring at the sky. Guess it's kind of weird, huh? She hummed in agreement. A little. Another silence settled between us. I carefully weighed my options. Both skills were burst damage attacks, one focused on internal damage, while the other stored force for a single, devastating finishing move. But there was something else to consider. Essence. I had been planning to create an attack skill using essence manipulation, but with these skills, I wouldn't have to start from scratch. I could take one of them and try applying essence to it instead. Between the two, Seismic Fist seemed like the better choice. It was simpler in concept and gave me more room to experiment with essence. Internal Burst felt too specialized. I wasn't sure how well it would integrate with my plans. Decision made, I mentally selected Seismic Fist. Skill acquired. Seismic Fist, level 1. And I felt information gather inside my head about the skill. I remained silent for a few seconds going over the skill and its usage. Next, I focused on the skill, eager to read its description. Seismic Fist, a technique that focuses and compresses raw power into a single devastating strike. By channeling and concentrating strength into one punch, the force is stored within the muscles for an instant before being unleashed on impact. I grinned. That looked solid. A skill I could work with. More importantly, a skill I could experiment with using essence. Ideas were already bouncing around in my head, different ways to push it beyond its limits. June's voice pulled me back. It seems like you've made your choice. Now let's move on. Let your friends select their skills. I nodded and stepped aside as Steve moved forward. We waited a couple of minutes before he was done. Then it was North's turn. She pressed her hand against the tablet, and I couldn't help but wonder what kind of skill would she pick. I was sure she'd go for an attack skill, but would she focus on strength or speed? That was the real question. A few minutes later, she stepped back, her choice made. June nodded, tapped a few things on the tablet, and placed it back in the box. All right, you three are done. Now I just have to wait for the rest of the unit. There are about 20 more around the volcano, so they should be arriving soon. I stepped forward and asked the question that had been on my mind. Vice Commander, how do I compare to Unit 01 in terms of strength and level? I'm sure you see my fights. Steve and North perked up, clearly interested in the answer. June smiled slightly. Well, Billion, since I'm also part of Unit 02, I'll be honest with you. As of today, across all the elite units, you rank in the top 3. The other 2 are from the royal family, so they're naturally expected to grow stronger. But you've definitely surprised both me and the commander. I furrow my brow. Top 3? That wasn't good enough. Considering the advantage my talent gave me, I expected to be ahead of everyone. It seemed like I needed to push harder. I nodded. Understood. I'll get to the top. North crossed her arms. It won't be that easy, Billion. Once people start selecting their classes, some will progress faster than others. I smirked. You should have more confidence in me, North. I don't lose. In fact, I've never tasted defeat in my life. Right, Steve? Steve shook his head and responded. No, you've been defeated. Multiple times. I facepalmed. I thought he'd back me up as my brother-in-arms, but I clearly expected too much. June chuckled. All right, it was nice meeting you all. I'll be heading out now. See you later. With that, she walked away. I stretched and glanced at the crates that had been dropped earlier. Let's grab our food supply and eat something. We moved toward one of the crates lying near a crater. I picked it up and carried it back to our resting area. We decided that from now until the end of the month, we'd be using this spot as our camp. Steve pried the box open. It was bigger than I expected, about 3 feet by 3 feet. Inside, we found an assortment of food, bottled water, and beverages. I clapped my hands. Wow, beautiful. North nodded approvingly. Excellent. Let's not waste time and dig in. We each grabbed some food, sat down, and started eating. Half an hour later, we leaned back, satisfied. I looked at Steve. So what skill did you get? Burst Flash, he said. It's a movement skill that lets me chain burst movements while fighting. Fits my style pretty well. I nodded, then turned to North. What about you? She took a sip of water before answering. Explosive shot. It adds extra force behind my arrows. I nodded again. Not sure if you guys care, but I picked Seismic Fist. It's basically an explosive finisher. North chuckled. Sounds like you. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Steve stood up and stretched. All right, I'm going to go practice my skill. See you at dinner. As Steve walked off, the silence settled between North and me. I glanced at her, half expecting her to get up and follow him, but she stayed put, calmly nibbling on a piece of dried fruit. That's when it hit me. Ever since North joined our group, we had somehow always avoided being alone together. Steve had always been there, whether during training, traveling, or even just eating. But now it was just the two of us, and for some reason, that fact made me more aware of everything. The quiet stretched, and I started overthinking. How did I come across to her? What kind of impression did I leave? I had never really considered it before, but now that I did, I realized something. I was always walking around barefoot. No shirt, just a pair of torn, dirt-stained pants. My body was constantly on display, muscular and rough from training and battle. Did she think I was some kind of wild animal? Some brute who barely remembered how to act civilized? I resisted the urge to glance at myself and see if I looked worse than usual. North suddenly shifted, tucking her legs under her as she leaned back on the tree. Her gaze flickered toward me for a brief second before she looked away, staring at the sky. I caught something in her expression. Was that hesitation? I cleared my throat, trying to break the tension. So, you think the food supply will last? She blinked, clearly surprised by the question. If we ration properly, yeah. I chuckled. Good point. Another pause. More silence. I wasn't used to this. Fighting, training, strategizing, I could handle all of that. But sitting here, being aware of every tiny shift in the air, every subtle glance, every unspoken word, it was unfamiliar territory. I decided to just say it. You know, we've never really been alone together before. North stilled. Her fingers played with a loose thread on her sleeve. Then she gave a small, lopsided smile. Yeah, I noticed. I tilted my head. You did. She shrugged. Of course. You and Steve are always together. And when I joined, it just never happened. Not until now. That meant she had thought about it too. I didn't know why, but that realization made my heart beat a little harder. I looked away, staring at the sky. Guess it's kind of weird, huh? She hummed in agreement. A little. Another silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, but charged. I felt like I should say something, but my brain refused to cooperate. I cleared my throat, feeling an unfamiliar heat crawl up my neck. So, what do you think of everything so far? North blinked, as if pulled from her own thoughts. Huh, this whole survival thing, I clarified. Enjoying it. She laughed softly. It's not bad, she admitted after a pause. Better than I expected, actually. I nodded and hummed in response. Then North spoke, her voice quieter than before. Billion. Yeah. She hesitated, then shook her head. Never mind. That shouldn't have made my heart beat faster. But it did. I shifted slightly, trying to appear casual. North. I called. Yeah, she replied, but she didn't look up. She was still playing with the loose thread on her sleeve, twisting it between her fingers. I hesitated, then called her name again. North. This time, she looked up. I stared into her eyes, and for some reason, I couldn't look away. Her brown eyes met mine, curiosity flickering in them. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. North tilted her head. What? Nothing. I rubbed the back of my neck. She smiled. You're acting weird. Yeah, I can see that, I muttered.